Islam, 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 Moorish kin. Want to rise and give all praises to the great God, Allah, Father God, Allah, and honors to his holy prophet, honors to our holy prophet, noble Drew Ali, A.L.L.A.H, Sharif Abdul Ali, that is. Give honors to our Moorish kin once again, here, there, and everywhere. And therefore, honors to all of you who are continuously honoring yourselves by being yourselves. Give honors to our Grand National Seal, Grand National Emblem, National Flag, Divine Constitution and bylaws, and honors to all of you who are indeed a living manifestation and personification of everything, and I do mean everything that our holy prophet brought to make us a nation. I want to give honors to all of our family, out there demonstrating whatever it is in talent that the Creator and the ancestors have graced you with. We're in a new era and time where it's time to uplift fallen humanity and bring our people out of the muck and the mire of their own ignorance and bring them into the light of their divinity. This is where we are at this particular hour. So we want to give honors to everybody out there who's giving their listening ear, because this is going to be a grand drawing that I'm bringing on the manifest. We want to make an emphasis so that our family really understand the reality in the presence of the Supreme Being, whom most of us know as God, Allah, Yahweh, Yahweh, whichever affiliation we use. We want to get to a clear conception, so to speak, of who this supreme reality is and how he has communicated with us throughout many different ages, so to speak, or climes of the time. That's if we have ears to hear and a heart to sympathize and empathize with the truth. Like I said, I want to make it plain with our family tonight. So this is going to be a grand drawing. So also, I will send the link out for anyone who would like to come forth in this special discussion. If not, I'm going to do what I do anyway. So it's just a grand drawing to be here to teach and uplift. Peace, brother, babe, brothers. We give honors to your family. Honors to you as well. Honors to you as well. Honors to all of those who show love and all of those who have no problem with being taught. And I love to be taught by my family as well. I love to have the listening ear of my family, and I also like to give my ear to listen to my family. And most of these measures that I bring forth are based on the reality of me listening to our family in relation to dealing with where they are along the way, everything it is that they may be questioning when it comes to dealing with self and so forth and so on. So, I just try to come and bring clarity to our family and give them insight so that they may be able to do their research and find self. That's what it's all about, finding self, family. You have God within you. You're a living expression and living manifestation of the great God. And that's what I want to demonstrate in this particular drawing tonight. Just trying to pull up one more document right here. And we love to use the hammer of repetition, but this here gonna be real powerful when we go into this particular drawing here. This is gonna be one of the most powerful demonstrations of the year right here. We start, 2023 off with some grand drawings. Peace, Vickers World. Like I say, let me post this link in here too, just in case somebody want to come in here and get on the panel. Like I said, this is an open discussion. We open for all of your opinions and everything, but we finna bring the reality of God to our people. Because see, a lot of people think the question has been, well, does he exist? Or where is he? And that's not the question The question is, do you recognize yourself? And once you recognize yourself, then you understand where he is. You see? It's in the essence of your being. So we're going to remove all the doubt and all the spookism. We're going to show you some historical aspects based upon the scriptural drawing. And then we're gonna go into the heights of divinity. So I'm gonna set this measure out here. Yeah. Peace, brother. Sincere Bay. Islam to you, brother. Praise be to Allah. So yeah, this is gonna be a very powerful demonstration, family. So if you can, hit that like and get people to subscribe, because we finna bring you some science from on high. And we're going to give it to you through what you're familiar with, through the conduit that you're familiar with. You know, if you're familiar with it, you know, through ancient Kemet, we're going to give it to you from Kemet. If you're familiar with it through the Piscean records of a lot of people call the Bible, we're going to give it to you through that apparatus. If you're familiar with it through the Quran, you know, or any scripture, we finna give it to you right now. You know, and more of all, we definitely going to give you the Moorish perspectives, you know, because that's the pretty much grand expression. If one is in opposition based on doctrine, you know, you welcome here. I ain't got no problem with you. None of that right there. That ain't never my particular position. You know, if you can't stand to hear the truth because it's coming from somebody other than yourself, that shows that you haven't grown yet into consciousness. And, you know, you got to clean up a little bit, but that's all right too, you know, because we don't have no hatred towards you for that particular position. So what I'm going to do, without further ado or delay, we're going to start in the book that we were buried in. We're going to start in the book that we were buried in. And we already know we talking about the Piscean record. What did it say about the description of the Most High? Because you see my subject title is Arm, leg, arm, head, the unity of Allah and man through deific will. What are we talking about here? Now, this ain't just somebody out here trying to throw around, you know, wordplay, trying to sound slick. I'm finna give you, you know, this grand reality. Now, it's up to you to do what it is that you have to do with this particular information, you know, whether it make you or break you. But again, my subject title is Arm, leg, arm, head, the unity of Allah and man through deific will. Now, I already know y'all familiar with the concept of, you know, the arm, leg, arm, head. You know, you heard the unity of Allah and man, or God and man. You know, and when I say through deific will, this has to do with a line of divinity that has to do with what unite you with your creator, so to speak. So where I'm gonna start at is in a few drawings. I was making a PDF and I stepped out of the PDF and I didn't even make the full PowerPoint. I was doing a few, but then I kind of just went on ahead and went to the online books themselves because I can get a little bit more there without having to compile a whole lot. But we're gonna emphasize on some things. There's a grand dispute in the Piscean records. You know, there was a statement in Genesis 1 verse 26 where the one referred to as God said he created man in his image. You know, and many have always had the question of what it means to be made in the image of God. Because when we look into a mirror and we look at our image, we see ourselves. Even though if you touch the mirror, you wouldn't be touching yourself. You would have to touch yourself in order to know that you are real, so to speak. You recognize that you are the one that's casting the image. That image can't express itself in any way unless you demonstrate movement in front of the mirror. So in all actuality, it is you who is animating the effect of what you see in a mirror. So basically, it's the same when you deal with the creator. You know, this body is basically more like a mirrored image. And we couldn't be animated if it wasn't for the macrocosmic image of the creator himself casting that special image upon us through the breath of life, right? Some people call it spirit. We can go into many different expressions of this, but nevertheless, it's the breath form. Everything in creation, when we deal with the breath form, they talked about breathing the breath and life into man and man becoming a living soul in the book of Genesis. But when you get into the actual expression of the breath form is composed of etheric substance. And when I say etheric substance is what vibrates and animates everything that we see now around us that is living. So this ain't no spookism, we actually giving it to. You know, in science, they'll just tell you, well, it's a cause, but they don't know exactly the essence of the cause and the root of the cause, but they just know it exists. On the other hand, bringing you out of the realm of spookism, because they can get a little spooky in science, even though they try to act like everybody when it comes to dealing with religious texts are spooky, they can get spooky in science. And when they can't explain something, then, you know, they dismiss it. So we're going to deal with everything. We want all the smoke, you know, tonight. We want all that there. You know, everything it is that our family want to bring forth in this conversation. You know, we don't do no arguing and, you know, all that type of demonstration, but we love the dialogue. We love the master, you know, mind, so to speak, meaning mastering our own minds. So again, family, you know, I want y'all to pay real close attention. Just like, again, we cast that image in the mirror, but that image in the mirror is only animated because of the movements we make. Again, we are only animated in this flesh as a result of a divine consciousness that's greater than this physical body. That's why in more science we say, well, is not the master of the house more honorable than its walls? Who is the master of the house but the consciousness within the house? If there's no consciousness in this house that we call the body, then there's no animation in the body. One is considered lifeless. I want you to keep that in mind. Because like I say, we're gonna give it to you. So nevertheless, we hear this. You know, we often hear it not only in the biblical context, but a lot of time in the Piscean records, they dwindle it down to one particular individual, you know, the God man, Yehoshua. And they would say, well, he is the image of God. But yet he tell you that, you know, greater things that you will be able to do as well. You know, when you understand that the kingdom of heaven is just the changing of your mind, you know, you can do the same thing and even more than what he did. So though everybody trying to put the rap on brother Yehoshua said, you know, hey, I ain't the only one that can demonstrate like that. You got the saving power when you can do the same thing. But a lot of people missing that particular degree when it comes to dealing with the scripture, because they want to lay the burden on one man and they don't want to do the work themselves. You see? So we want to keep that in mind, family, you know, as we go into this special drawing. Because I'm gonna deal, but I'm gonna touch on a couple of things and we're gonna revisit a few things here and there. But I want to make sure that our family gets some clarity. So when you come up out of this special demonstration here, you're gonna know, you know, who God is, and you know how you are able to tap into the blessings of your own divinity to be able to change your condition. Because that's what this is really all about. Whatever you may be going through, whatever struggles, you know, you may be going through, we're going to let you know that you have the power to change your condition. You have the power to create your own world, so to speak. If you are made in the image of the Creator, then you have to be made in every aspect. He was able to bring life into existence or something out of nothing. So if you made in his image, you should be able to bring something out of nothing too, right? Not just say this and be hoping for it, and all in all, you feeling like you don't have any type of saving power in you at all. If you truly one with the Creator, you made in his image, you should be able to do the same thing that he does. So coming out of a state of darkness and ignorance, many of us not being knowledgeable of ourselves, now when you come into an understanding of the supreme reality, the God mind or the Godhead, and that this is part and parcel of your being and your character, you have the ability to make something for nothing. You see? We already see we have the ability to procreate, so we bring life into the manifest. But we also have the ability to govern that life. We have been given the keys. We have been equipped with everything we need to be able to govern everything in creation. The earth itself sustains us. The earth itself, is on the manifest to serve us. But yet and still, when we look at things in creation around us that's supposed to be inanimate, we have come into a belief that these things are greater than us. So we are in awe based on the things that we see taking place in the cosmos, coming out of the sea, or just anything around us, but we don't realize that everything outside of us is a part of us. You see? Oh, we're going to go there tonight. So let me touch on a few things that, just to give our family some insight. And we're going to share our screen in a few minutes and get real deep into this drawing. But I want to touch on a few things for those who have a misconception about this being that we call God or Godhead. And we going beyond just religion. We're going to touch on some things scripturally, but we finna show y'all the reality. Okay, so after hearing about, this God, the supreme reality, creating, making a man in his image, if you go a little further, you'll see that in the book the Piscean records, because we're given a description. Surely, if there's a God, then he has to be involved with our affairs. And if he's on the manifest, then he is always ever present. And how is this possible for him to be ever present? Because he's working through us. It's that simple. When Abraham, according to the Piscean records, was on the scene, there was a time in the book of Genesis, Bereshit, 18:14, where it says that the Lord, and when they use that word Lord, is actually talking about is Adonai, Adon. So it said he appeared to him, it says, by the oaks of Mamre, right? And he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. This is what they tell you now in the book of Genesis. And it says, is there anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son. But what was being discussed here, if you go deeper into the story, in him appearing to him, there are some events that took place. Now, the main events that took place is where Abraham was said to fetch he basically went and got water for the supreme being that was in his presence. He wanted to wash his feet. He got bread and milk and prepared a meal. And these were three men now. If you go through the whole breakdown. 3 men that came. And it was out of these same 3 men that they would end up being the ones that destroyed the people that was basically acting crazy in Sodom and Gomorrah. We'll put it that way. So God himself, we heard, telling the people, he was actually dealing directly with the people. He came in the form of a man prior to Yehoshua. This is what I'm getting at. And we're going to show you this now. So y'all know the story. So Abraham sat down and he ate with the supreme being. And from the story, he was eating, basically the milk, the drink he had, a part of this meal, it was bread, and they even said that he was given calf to eat. So this is a story of the biblical text telling you that God sat down, he drank milk, he ate some cow, he had butter and everything, right? This is what they saying in the Piscean records. This is the description, a mortal man sitting down with Abraham. He came in that form prior to Yehoshua, being physically born. We ain't gonna get into, oh yeah, the spirit and all this here was ever present in it. We're talking about a physical man, and not in one time in that Hebrew scripture does it say Yehoshua was during that time. But it says that Yahweh, that's the actual name they use. You don't believe me? I'm gonna show it to you in a minute. So if this is the truth, according to the scripture, God appeared as a man himself to sit down and break bread with one that he would commission as a prophet, also a progenitor, so to speak, because that's another thing. Abraham was one that was given a grand blessing too, because he told him, he said, seeing that he would surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. But I don't know about nobody else. When you hear all of the nations being blessed, that don't leave nobody out. We know the argument between who's supposed to be chosen and who had the covenant and all this here. But if he said all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him, that include the ones who got the covenant and those who are also just blessed by the grace of coming through the loins of Abraham. There was even a drawing where it even tell you that Abraham had met Melchizedek. In the book of Hebrews, it talked about that. When he was still in the loins of his father. That's before he physically became manifest, basically. Basically when he was in the spirit plane. And so when you hear them saying one being made a high priest after the order of Melchizedek, the order of Melchizedek really has to do with, an order of preparation, a degree of preparation, so to speak, or preparation right before one even come into the flesh, they being chosen for the work that they call to do, according to creative fate, for the same reason that spirit man is given a soul to function upon the plane of soul, where you have a particular task that you are assigned, you have a particular duty that you must fulfill, you have obligations that must be fulfilled, and this ain't by chance. This is all according to predestination. So the order of Melchizedek, really has to do with being within the sacred grove, the sacred grove, being taught, while you were still within the womb of your mother. That's the real essence of it. So this is how he was made a high priest, Yehoshua, after the order of Melchizedek, because his first lesson became when he was in the womb of his mother too. But that's a whole nother drawing. I just want to get into some of this stuff right here so that we can bring, a reality on the manifest. So nevertheless, again, we talking about a man Genesis 18, 1 through 8. Go and check it out. It tell you, say, when he looked up, when Abraham looked up, he lifted his eye, he looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw him, he ran and met them from the tent of the door. Now, this is what they tell you. They say he bowed down toward the ground. He prostrated, basically, and said, my Lord, if I found favor in your sight now, pass not away. You know what I mean? I'm here. Let me give you a little water. Let me wash your feet. Y'all get y'all a little rest. This is basically what Abraham was saying to him. Get y'all some rest. You know, Sarah, go over there and get that bread. You know, go get that milk. You know, go get, you know, that little meal we got ready over there. We finna sit down and eat. And he knew he was feeding God, basically, according to the way the Piscean records change. So this is telling us, we done set the precedent. We already showed you that man is made in the image of God. So if made in the image of God, then he can be nothing more than the same expression of God himself. Macrocosmic, you know, embracing the microcosm, so to speak. So now we are seeing God actually take on a physical body and interact with, you know, men in this book, Genesis. So this right here is going to set a foundation, and you're going to see a common pattern here, you know, but there will come a time where, as if the Most High withdraws himself, and he began to use men like Abraham and a few more of them, and we call them prophets, you know, men of divinity, brothers of the cloth, but he utilized them to express his will. He could have did that from the beginning, you know, but he chose after that particular time. If you go into the Old Testament, in most cases, you're going to find that God is using other men to do his bidding, to exercise his will. If he wanted to show you he was powerful, then he used a man to express that power. If he wanted to show you that he was all loving, then he sent a man to demonstrate that attribute of love. And the same thing had to do with many other attributes that he came to bring forth. So we're going to really overthrow the fallacy that's often being, we'll say, taught out here by a lot of those who claim to be of the supreme being, but try to keep things on a spooky level. We bringing it to you in a reality. So nevertheless, there's a drawing where it speaks also, even prior to Abraham, where it said that when Adam and Eve had got out of line and sowed discord, so to speak, that's the language we use in the Moorish paradigm. They heard, you know, the footsteps of God walking, you know, basically in that special day. This is what they say now. So again, this is God physically walking according to the Bible. Now, actually, they use the word what is mithhalek, and that's M-I-T-H-L-L-E-K, and this has to do with God walking in the garden, right? But there's also a parallel to that, because that same word that expressed God walking in the garden also expresses, in definition, a righteous man who walks in his integrity. So the same word that is used for God walking in the garden of Eden, is the same word being used for a righteous man who walks in his integrity. So in other words, when you are in a higher state of consciousness, when you are in your garden of divinity, so to speak, being in this world but not of this world, then you are walking as a living manifestation, as a God man, a God woman for our sisters. You see, walking in your integrity is basically walking in your God state. This is real talk. This is removing all the spookism now. I'm telling you. I'm going to show this to you real quick. so that our family really get it. Let me share my screen. So this is when we get into the essence of the measure. Let me share my screen real quick. Peace, Brother Marquise. So, like I say, we ain't dealing with no spookism. So if you caught up on spookism, you're going to be real offended by this right here. I'm using all scripture and everything to back up what I'm saying too. Walking in your purpose, being a man of integrity, you actually become, again, the extension of the divinity that's in the essence of your being. We call it flesh divine. God man, God women, you see? And this is why most of our people have lost faith in a supreme being. They think it's hogwash because they don't believe in themselves. See, they had you looking everywhere for the Most High, up in the sky, in relics, had you wearing things around your neck, talking about you believe in God, he died for you, all types of stuff, right? You look everywhere except within yourself. You ever seen how, in most cases, you drop keys and you looking around, you got to go, you got to get out of the house, you got to go, but you done drop your keys and you looking for them. You digging all over the place, and then you look, they was right there all the while. This is the same type of measure that I'm talking about when it comes to dealing with recognizing that God is in the essence of your being. We ain't talking about no cultic, occultism, or none of that. We telling you the spirit of God in you. All y'all know that. Everybody know that. Right? But we finna show it to you. Now, what our people do with this after we give it to them, that's on them. You see? My duty is just to convey the message. So what I'm going to do, let me go here first. Let me open up and share this demonstration. Ain't nobody going to have no misunderstanding about who the supreme reality is no more when we get done with this demonstration, right? So, if we go back up here, let me see this thing right here. Better yet, I can actually do it this way. It'll probably be better. Because I want to go straight to it. I don't want to waste no time. So y'all don't think I'm making this stuff up. Because, sometimes, you put it out there. Just because I can bring it off the head don't mean I should. You see what this says right here? It says Abraham's celestial visitors, right? Now, this would be the expression of the actual scripture here, right? Now, it says here, right, in the heat to his tent. I ain't got to go into the Hebrew and, speak that out of none of that right there, but I will emphasize certain words when I get to them. It says, in the heat to his tent, and the door was sitting, and as he of memory by the oaks, right? Yahweh to him and appeared. In other words, they saying that the supreme being appeared to Abraham. Is telling us Yahweh, right? They say Yahweh, Yahweh. Whichever way you pronounce it, all is well. We know what you're trying to say. So nevertheless, he appeared to him, right? Then it tell you down here, it says it was standing men, and it was 3 of them, right? The same word they use in Arabic for men, this is just one of the words. Anasim. Nas is also a word in Arabic for men, a man. But it says that 3 of them now, they basically were there. It said again, he bowed himself down. He bowed himself in adoration, so to speak. It says that basically he met him, he ran when he saw him, and basically told him that wait a minute. If I find favor in your sight, then my Lord, he used the word Adonai, right? Another word, right? And he goes on to talk about washing the feet. Same thing. I ain't going through, I'm just going a little bit by bit, and touching on things so y'all will know this is the same thing that was said in the little King James version that we gave to you a few minutes ago. Now he talks about bringing them bread, which is Lahim. Everybody know the house of bread of Bethlehem, right? That word Lahim right there, right? This is real bread that, Abraham is getting ready to break with God. You see? And they had a lot of convo. He had Sarah to go get all this stuff for him. All you got to do is go look this stuff up yourself. Nevertheless, look at what it said. It said that Abraham wished the calf and the milk and the butter. She took it and prepared it. And he hastened the three by them, and stood he before them, right? And he prepared it. And so they basically ate, it says right here. They ate. Way you Caleb is what they said. They ate. So now this is Yahweh, also referred to as Adonai in this particular area, that actually sat down, being among the three men that ate with Abraham. So this should remove all doubt, that God would express himself as a man. And not just man by gender, because we're going to give you the true definition of that too. But we are speaking of a, manifestation of the supreme being. In most cases, they expressed him in the masculine form. But we do believe that the Most High, would manifest itself also in every form. Any woman that was in union with a prophet of God, she had to be one in that same spirit. In fact, that's what a real marriage came place at. In the oneness, in the unity of their divinity. That deific will again. You see? She was an extension of that. If her God man was holy, she was holy too. Or set aside as holy, as they like to say, right? So, watch this. I want you to see this real quick. Watch this. I'm going to just type this in right here. Oh, my bad. I don't put it. There we go. Okay. Let me see. Okay. Let's see if he give it to us here. We'll just go there because they ain't giving it to me that way. Let's see here. We'll just go here with it. And then we'll come back to the word. Show you everything they talk about in their little creation theories, right? Where's that? Y'all already know what time it is when the disobedience come on to manifest, so to speak. Right? Here it is right here. And they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, right? They heard the voice of the Lord. So he got a mouth, so I would imagine, if they heard his voice and they say he was calling out to them and he was walking, he had to have a form. Although they didn't go into the essence of explaining everything about his form, we know he had a mouth and he was walking through the garden, right? So this is another area where it's actually telling you that God basically manifested itself, before them. See, you got to pay attention to these little details right here, right? Right there. There you go. So what do you think it was saying? You think the Spirit of God was walking? Or did he have a physical form just like he had when he approached Abraham? Was it the same form or a different form? Right? We don't know. We wasn't there, but we know that these scriptures over here say in both cases that he was on the manifest himself. So I'm trying to show you that the Most High has always been present, though he has been present through the many forms of the masterminds that he has sent throughout the times and the climb. This is what I'm getting at. You know, and this removes all the spookies, and that come all the way up until now, unless we don't believe in us. We don't believe in ourselves, because that's all these prophets were trying to teach us, that the supreme reality was in us. We were the temple of perfected man. And if we know ourselves well enough, we can tap into that God power, tap into the divinity within, and change our condition. If you made in the image, like they say now, we're making it plain now. So check us out. I'm going to drop this link too for somebody who just came that might want to get on this panel, right? If you don't believe in self, this right here going to be hard for you to accept. Now let me go over here. So we go over here to the Hebrew and we pull it up. Same reality. It tell you that Yahweh was also walking. Yahweh Elohim. He was also there. Look, see, that's that word, mithalek, which is walking, right? Now, when you go into this word, family, notice, and it show you everywhere where this word is used in the Piscean records of the Bible. Mithalek, right? God walking in the God, right? He walks in the midst. That's Deuteronomy 23:14, right? It's talking about a king walking before. You know, no matter what, that same word is being used there. Mithalek, right? But this was the one that got me. These definitions here. A righteous man who walks in his integrity. The just man walking in his integrity. Walks in his integrity. That's Proverbs 20:7. The same word that's being used for you being a righteous man, brothers. Walking in your integrity. A just man walking in your integrity, in your righteousness. The same word is used for God walking. So in your highest state, when you are in your integrity and being one with God through the Deific will, what you think you become? You become a living manifestation, a vessel through which the Creator is basically enforcing his will. That's what a prophet basically was. That's why we say a prophet is a thought of Allah manifested in the flesh in our paradigm, in the Moorish teaching. We say man is spirit clothed with soul made in the form of Allah, in the form of God. You see? So this removes all the spookism, family. Check us out now. So it's already obvious that it's expressing that God has a anatomy. He has a physical vessel in these particular events that took place. So let's go into it a little bit. We're going to use the hammer of repetition. And I already got it set up right here. In this particular drawing here, you can see this is Genesis 6:8. It said Noah had grace in the eyes of God. So wait a minute, you saying that God has eyes, huh? We're going to tell you, you know, what all this mean in a minute. You see? Surely if he see things, then he had to have eyes, right? Well, we see he had a physical body a few minutes ago. So it don't surprise us that he have eyes. Only difference is that he is all seeing. He is all hearing. He is all knowing with his particular demonstration. How is he able to demonstrate this? Because his spirit, the oneness of his spirit, pervades through all of creation. That's what we call in the Moorish paradigm the grand ideal of that precludes to monotheism. So it's one thing to say God is one, but there's another thing to recognize that God is also one with his creation. And he expresses himself through various different attributes and vessels to express those attributes, so to speak, within the creation, right? Removing all the spookism. And once you realize this, you're going to say, man, well, who I've been praying to? Because really, prayer is when you talk to God, i.e., the higher self, higher consciousness. Meditation is when you listen to Him. You see? That's why I say when you pray, pray in spirit. You see? The spirit that is within you, right? So here's another measure here. It talked about where it says in Numbers 23:27, and Balak said unto Balaam, come, I pray thee, I take thee unto another place. It may be it's right in the eyes of God to pierce it for me from thence. Again, we talking about the eyes of God again. So automatically, if he got eyes, then he got to have a head. You know, we often hear people talk about the mind of God, right? If he got ears, he got to have a head. Even though he is more elevated than all of us, it is because he expresses his sight through what we see. In other words, when we see, God sees simultaneously. So it's really not us doing the seeing. It's the Creator doing the seeing through us. So we've been thinking that we something because we got a pair of eyes. But yet when we go blind, the Most High still has, insight. He don't have blindness. He don't have issues, with seeing. There's never a blurry vision, obscure vision when it comes to dealing with the Creator. So this sets him apart when it comes to his insight, as opposed to dealing with ours, but yet he utilizes us as vessels to express what he sees. I'm going to give you a prime example. If it's somebody that he has placed a grand degree of love in, and based on that love and their observation, they seen a lot of harm being done, a lot of war being waged on the manifest, people getting killed, took off the count, being treated all types of ways. If he's kindled that flame, that love flame in that particular one, based on what they seen, and they are empathizing and sympathizing with people that try to change their condition, and they may be successful in changing the condition of a people, aiding and assisting them, God basically allowed them to see through his eyes, that way they may tap into the divinity within themselves to muster up the strength to be able to do what needs to be done to change a condition. And that's why you have people who get in all fields of life of trying to change something, becoming, experts in this particular field. That they can be doctors, they can do anything, whatever talent the Most High put in somebody. But when they become extraordinary, it's not the man that's doing it, it's the Creator that's doing it. Because most people that's religious, when man does something for them, they give praises to the Creator, not the man himself. In other words, they don't know it, but it's in the nature. Simultaneously, you recognizing the Creator working through this man. This man may have blessed you with, financial literacy, a financial ability to be able to bring yourself out of poverty. You give praises to the Most High. But it's the man that basically did this. You hear me emphasizing this, but I don't think our people get it. You see, so they had to be looking with the eyes of God to be able to say, man, that's wrong, man. We can do better than that right there. I tell you what, I'm going to try to do something better. You feel me? So this is what I'm getting at when I speak on the eyes of God. We bringing it out of spookism into reality. So God is basically speaking through man to man. He's working with man through man. You see, he aids and assists man through man. It's simple. Some of us know that we are conduits of God. Some of us don't know. And most of the one that don't know and are in self-denial, a lot of people like to call it, he's an atheistic, that's basically somebody that don't believe in themselves. Because we ain't talking about a spook. outside of the self, up there in the sky somewhere flying around. No, we talking about the reality of God expressed through you. And there's no death for that God, because long after this physical body gone, me or you, those in the sound of my voice, myself, is still those who gonna come behind us and still continue to carry on in this same spirit. Some improving upon what we done in our lifetime, being inspired by what we done. You see? You see how it works? So again, here's another message in 1 Kings 3:10. The word will be good in the eyes of God, that Solomon asked this word, right? Eyes of God, right? 1 Chronicles 21:7. And it is evil in the eyes of God concerning this thing. And he smited Israel, right? It says also Job 33:6. See, I am the same as you are in the eyes of God. I was cut off from the same bit of wet earth, right? Proverbs 3:4. Find grace and good understanding in the eyes of God and man, right? Proverbs 21:4. Haughty and arrogant eyes and a proud heart, the lamp of the wicked, their self-centered pride. It says it's sin in the eyes of God. So we get it. You know, no matter what we look at here, the eyes of God is on the manifest. And the eyes of God basically, you know, utilizes you. Because truly, what is considered evil to us on the manifest, you know, good, you know, it don't remove God either way. We the ones react to what we consider good and evil, and we become reactionaries based on how good somebody treated us, or how evil, or how bad they treated us. You know, but when it comes to the Most High, you know, he don't frown upon, basically put it like this right here. He don't need you or your good, you know, in order for him to be content in being the supreme reality. But if you want to be an agent of divinity and allow the Most High to use you to better creation, to better fallen humanity, and so, all right, all is well. But if you choose the buck, I mean, that ain't gonna bother him at all. You know what I mean? He don't need your praise. He don't need your worship. You know, like, you know how most human beings, they need somebody to confide in. They need people to big them up. And, you know, when you get out of those type of emotions, that's when you know that the Most High is using you as a vessel. When you can get out of the state of feeling like you need somebody's approval, or you need somebody to pat you on the back, or you need somebody to aid and assist you. You in need, you in need, you in need. That's because you don't recognize that everything that you are looking for, you know, all of the honor that you expect to be given, you already have it. You just don't know it because you're looking outside of the self. So that's why we teach in our paradigm, we don't worship or serve gods outside of the self. See, we're talking about the reality of the Most High, expressed through you, expressed through your brother. That's why we say if you look again into the face of man, you look into the face of God, Allah. You obviously, if you look into the face of your people and you know you're looking at the essence of God, you know, you're looking beyond the flesh. You see, you ain't caught up in the flesh. You know, if you're looking beyond that and you can see the essence of somebody's family, you know, then you got divine vision. You looking through the eyes of God. It is only man that sees someone based upon what title they have placed upon them, or title they placed on themselves. And then they kindle up emotions based upon the titles, you know, that somebody took. You see what I'm saying? That's real talk, family. Pay attention to us now. We're going to give it to you uncut. I'm going to drop this link again for anybody that want to come in here. Like I say, this is open. So let me keep going, because it's going to get good in a minute. It's going to get real good in a minute. So we see the eyes of God, you know, even in the aspect of dealing with the face of God, because that's where I went at first. It talk about, the earth should be corrupted, Genesis 6:11, in the face of God, right? The earth shall be corrupted to the face of God, and the earth shall be filled with violence. Well, if we look into the face of man, we see God, then the earth has become corrupted because man would not be, or rather he don't want to see what he want to be, so to speak. It even went to the aspect of dealing with the face of God in Genesis 32:30, when it was talking about Jacob when he wrestled with God, and they called the place Peniel, the face of God, saying, "For I've seen God face to face, yet my life has not been snatched away." This Peniel, Mount Peniel, actually on a physiological level has to do with, a particular area in the brain that has to do with the pineal gland. The pineal gland is, a representation of the third eye, all-seeing eye, spiritual insight. That's a universal symbol. Whether you go in the Kemet, the biblical text, Quran, or whatever, everybody bear witness to the all-seeing eye of the Creator, who sit high and look low, so to speak, right? But nevertheless, Jacob said that he seen God face to face, but he went within himself. This is how he was able to see God face to face. He recognized the God that was within himself. See, we don't want to claim this. We don't want to embrace this, and we wonder why we catching so much hell. Because you don't want to embrace God within. You don't want to bear witness to God within. You don't want to look at the God within yourself. You believe you're a Negro. You believe you're a black man. You believe you're a colored man. You believe you this body. You see what I'm saying? So you don't want to hear that you got power within you, because now that gives you a burden of responsibility. You can't use somebody else as a scapegoat for why you want to act crazy or why you don't want to do it. Because, this is the reality right here. And this has always been the teaching. This ain't something that's just been made up now. This has always been the teaching. Either God manifested himself in a physical body, or he expressed himself through righteous men. And he ain't stopped doing that. You may have not seen, a whole bunch of individuals in this new era in time getting, books and revelations, but you sure see individuals that the Most High may have touched, and they ain't all grown. You see babies that the Most High done touched, and he expressing himself, especially the ones being born now. They can do some of the things that you couldn't dream about doing when you was their age. And many of our people don't recognize that this is the supreme being in his doing. So the key is being able to recognize God within the self. Right there in the Old Testament, Jacob, who became Israel, was able to recognize that. But yet you got people still arguing about who God is and who he ain't. If you know yourself, then be yourself. It's as simple as that. Genesis 32:31. It says the sun will rise to him when he passed through the face of God, right? And he limped upon his thigh, right? It said that he knocked Jacob's thigh out the socket, so to speak. Imagine that, wrestling with God. We know the metaphysics behind this right here, but actually it said that he was wrestling with a man. In Genesis 32:30, it actually said the man Ish. He was wrestling with Ish, and Ish is a man. But it also goes into that demonstration later, and it say, that he was basically dealing with Yahweh. So Yahweh manifested himself as a man again, even in the time, of Jacob. I'm gonna show you real quick. Hold up, let me see this. Because we're gonna keep giving it to you so that y'all can see what we talking about. I hate when this thing try not to let me do my typing. Okay, so we should be able to get it here then. Okay, there we go. I want the whole thing, really, to be honest with you. Now, if you know here, in this area, he called the name of God Elohim here, right? This is Jacob, Yaqub, right? Let me get to the particular script. I'm going to show you something. Now, I done showed you already. Abraham just sat down with the Most High, ate a whole meal. Adam and Eve had heard him previously. Walking through the garden, they heard his voice. And now we got Jacob on the manifest. And he wrestled with the Most High God, right? See, some things are meant to be expected to be thought as a parable, right? Some things are taken as they are. So I'll let y'all deal with, whatever it is that you have to think in regards to dealing with that. But if he didn't say that it was a parable, then I take it for what it's written as. And from that aspect, the problem is most of us don't believe that we have the ability to be in the presence of the Supreme Being. But we can see in most of these scriptures in the Old Testament, the way it was translated, they basically given that type of narrative that the Most High was actually amongst men on more than one occasion now. And these are just the obvious drawings that most of our people deal with now. We ain't talking about, it's many other accounts that's here. Where is that? Okay. Okay, yeah, we getting close to it right now. My little computer's slow too, family. I got a lot of stuff up here, so y'all bear with me. This demonstration moving real. There it go, right there. Remember I told y'all right here, look at what it says. Notice it says ish. For those who don't know, that's ish right there. Even though it's is, it's not is, it's ish. You see? So he basically was wrestling with an ish, right? They actually highlighted it. See it right there? You can see it now. See, it says ish, a man. You can actually see it here. If you're familiar, that's Aleph. Then you got the yard and the shin right there. A, Y, S, and H. A man. H, right? And they say he wrestled, right? Alone. And Jacob, right, was left. So this ish, that he wrestled with, if you go into the scripture, it already let you know it was talking about Elohim. You already know because he was talking about being blessed right here in 32 and 26. Said, let me go. He said, yeah, if you blessing me, he gonna take his blessing, huh? Yeah, Israel, Jacob, right? Say, what's your name? Right? He said his name was Jacob. He said, no, it's gonna be called Israel. And this is where Israel was said to get their name from. Yisrael. See it right there? Let me blow that up. This is after a confrontation, with him. And it says right here now, your name, it say Israel is your name now, but it ain't gonna be called Jacob no more. And he said that he had prevailed with God and man. That's what they'll tell you in the King James. It just say with men, Anasim, it says, and with Elohim. And you have struggled now. And you done prevailed in your struggle between God and man. That's how they read it now. Look, let's go back to the King James Version. See it right there? Right here. Same thing. This is the translation. Tell me, I pray thee thy name. And he said, wherefore is it that thou doest ask after my name? And he blessed him there. We know only person that got the ability to bless somebody is the Most High. So they telling you that he was literally wrestling with God. Everybody know the story. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. He's seen the Elohim. So God has expressed himself, we can see by the name of Adonai, also Elohim, Yahweh, still the same reality, but expressing itself through different attributes. You see? Can't go right there if you think I'm playing. So it's up to you. If it tell you he wrestled with a man, a ish, and that ish, in other words, was a man, again, God is physically present. See, this is before. This is all the times that he done manifest. There's many other things I can go to show the same thing over and over again, but we don't need to be redundant with this demonstration. We're just trying to bring our people out of the spookism. And if he didn't come himself, he sent angels again, and angels came in the form of men too. Once we begin to understand this, family, we will realize that our salvation has always been at the end of our own arm. That's if we are connected through deific will to the Most High. You got to have a clean heart and a pure mind. So if you're out here praying to gods outside of the self of whom you know nothing, and you don't have a clean heart and pure mind, and you still doing things that you know you ain't got no business doing, and acting like you a man of the cloth, so to speak, and things ain't going your way, it's because you choose to continue to exercise, the lower self, the flesh, or be exercised by the flesh, so to speak. You're not thinking with the God power that you have in you. So you thinking somebody else, you ought to be saved, by somebody outside of the self, or your salvation is at the extension of a man other than yourself. You see? So now we done showed you already, the presence of God in many different aspects. We're going to keep driving this point home, right? We already know that if he got a face, if he got ears, if you hear this book talking about the heart of God, him being able to walk, either he manifested in a vessel or he sent somebody to manifest these good qualities of healing and redemption, and resurrection and all that. He sent somebody to do this. Throughout there ain't no individuals more special than the other. They all did their particular part. We call them mastermind coming throughout the clans of the time. I want you to see this one though. We talking about arm, leg, arm, head. We already know that's what form. I want you to see this now. This is very important because this is going to give us a revelation. Let me see this here. And they got it up in here. Let's see. They had a couple of them here. This is one right here. And it's more than this right here. I don't know why they just giving me that one right now. They got a whole bunch of them when it speaks on the arm of God. I do know this. Is thine arm then like the arm of God? Right? Maketh thy voice such a sound as his doeth, right? You know, are you strong? Because that's what we talk about, being the strength of God made manifest, right? And I'm just using this particular drawing here. And they got many of them. All you got to do is go through here. You know, it even tell you that Moses himself. Let me pull up this PowerPoint real quick that I was doing, because I actually got a couple of them in here. But when I seen the other area, see, a lot of that's the same stuff I was just going over. Let me show you what I'm talking about right here. This one right here is the one where it says the eternal God is a dwelling place, and underneath are everlasting arms, right? And he drove out the enemy from before you and said, destroy, right? This is the Most High. He drove out the enemy that was among people, but he did it at the arms, or under the arms of men, right? This was Isaiah 51, 59 and verse 1, where it spoke on the Lord's hand is not so short that it cannot save, nor his ear dull that it cannot hear. But who do you think it's referring to when it talk about his hand? It's at the extension of whoever that prophet is, whoever that angel is, whoever that particular vessel is that he is sending to a people. It can be you in this new era and time. It's Isaiah 63:12, who caused his glorious arm, right, to go at the right hand of Moses, who divided the waters before them to make for himself an everlasting name. You hear that? He caused his glorious arm to go at the right hand of Moses. That means that Moses himself was acting, you know, as the vessel through which God exercised his will. How do we know this to be fact? You know, because according to the Piscean records, this is what he said right here. This was Moses right here. This is what Moses said. Look at it. This is a covenant now. Now, you got to remember what the Most High said to him. In Exodus 7, 1 and 5, he said, the Lord said to Moses, see, I have made thee a God to Pharaoh. This is God saying that he made him a God, a Elohim to Pharaoh, right? And Aaron, thy brother, shall be thy prophet. And thou shalt speak all that I command thee. And Aaron, thy brother, shall speak unto Pharaoh, right? Then he said, you know, he asked the Most High, you know, if I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your father sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What should I tell them? He told them, I am who I am. A.L.L.A.H, right? He said, this is what you ought to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. Now, I don't know about nobody else, but we know I am is referring to the self. When I say I am or somebody, no, but I am is referring to you. He said, you know, who shall I say? Basically, he told him, tell him you. I am. Tell him I am sent. You know what I mean? You that guy. I self, Lord, am master. That's who sent him. I'm in you. I place saving power in you. I'm working through you. You my vessel. I am that I am. So when they see you, they see my will being expressed. So this is what we mean when we say linking your will up with deific will. This is the grand idea that precludes the monotheism. Though Moses was there, it was really the Most High. See, we like to talk about the prophets and what they did and all the while. This was the Most High doing the work through these men. That's what we fail to realize. These prophets were vessels that he expressed himself through time and time again, based upon the need of the people that was in need. Right? Let me see. So, watch this. This is the good part, though. It says the covenant in Moab. It said, these are the words of the covenant which the Lord commanded Moses to make with the children of Israel in the land of Moab, beside the covenant which he had made with them in Or. If you seen my videos, you already know what this finna say. But if you new here, this may blow your mind. And Moses, this is what it's saying. God told him this. This is the covenant with he was making with the Israelites in Moabite. In the Moabite region, so to speak. It says, and Moses called unto all Israel and said unto them, ye have seen all that the Lord did before your eyes in the land of Egypt unto Pharaoh, and unto all his servants, and unto all his land. The great temptations which thine eyes have seen, the signs and those great miracles. Yet the Lord have not given you a heart to perceive, eyes to see, and ears to hear unto this day. In other words, he's saying they can't see with the eyes of God. They ain't been hearing with the ears of God. They ain't had the heart of God. He said, I have led you 40 years. This is what Moses told him. In the wilderness, your clothes are not waxing old upon you. Thy shoe is not waxing old upon thy foot. And ye have not eaten bread, neither have ye drunk wine or strong drink, that ye might know that I am the Lord your God, my God. You heard what Moses said to them. Moses said he led them 40 years out there now. Their clothes ain't got old on them or none of that. Their shoes ain't got old on them. They have not eaten bread or they ain't drunk nothing or nothing, that they might know that he, Moses, is the Lord their God. That's what he said. And God told him to say this to them according to what was said up here. These are the words of the covenant, which he commanded Moses to say. Then he tell him that I am, sonny. So Moses was the conduit that was acting as the divinity of the Most High. How do we know this? Because he told him up here, he said to Moses in Exodus 7, 1-5, that he made him a god to Pharaoh. So Moses was acting as a god, Elohim, Adonai, over the children of Israel at that particular time. He was the vessel. He was the conduit. He was the one that the saving power came through at that time. Big facts. Can't nobody deny that, not if they're in their right mind. So I don't even have to keep going on and on, but I just wanted to show you that because we talked about the arm, Moses being the arm, of God. And there are many places where it talk about the arm of deliverance, the arm of God. That's Moses. To them, any particular prophet that came was pretty much expressing the divinity of the supreme being. This is that arm, leg, arm, head degree. It ain't strange that they call your limbs by that. That's done by divine design. So that brings me to this point right here, because it ain't just biblical what these types of things getting expressed. We finna get into the Quran in a few minutes. This is for all of those who, are taught certain things, especially when it comes to dealing with Allah. You're going to find out that it's a lot of these similar statements that was made in the Piscean records have been made in regards to dealing with men in reference to Islam as well. So let's go further. I just went over this one recently, a few days ago. Ibn Arabi was a scholar in Islam, and he's well respected and honored as a Sufi scholar by most Muslims, even though a lot of them can't stand Sufism. Ibn Arabi family had students. And there were those who also were demonstrating their little degrees as well in the wisdom. So they brought their measures forth. So in this particular tradition that was passed down, it says Ibn Arabi presupposes the absolute identity of God and man. And Al-Jili introduces a subtle difference of level between God's and man's attributes. Now listen to what's said. Now you heard what I just said a few minutes ago in the Bible, dealing with men and how men have been conduits for God. This is from the Islamic side now. Listen to what it says. It says, God made this name Allah a mirror for man. Arm, leg, arm, head. When you look in the mirror, that's what you see. A.L.L.A.H. I'm telling you, if the European knew that your 5 limb was going to spell the name Allah, they wouldn't have did it, because this is a Christian nation. But unbeknownst to them, when they plot and plan, the Most High is the best of planners. So he was just demonstrating a little divine humor when he put it in the mind of the European to call your 5 limbs, arms and legs and arms and a head, that they just so happen to spell the name Allah. That's the humor of the creator right there. You can't make that one up. Can't none of y'all deny it. Anybody that can't stand Allah, you can't change the fact that your 5 limbs, when you put them in an acronymic state, even if you're a Hebrew, Buddhist, Jew, whatever you is, don't matter what your religion is, you pull that letter off of that first, off of the word, the word you spell it on, if you isolate that A, you isolate that L, and you isolate the other A again for that other arm, you isolate the H from head, that's Allah. So when we say God made his name Allah a mirror for man, so that when he looks in it, he knows the true meaning of God was, and there was nothing besides him. See, that's the whole purpose. Even though you think you own this flesh, ain't nothing greater than the God that's within the flesh. It says, and in that moment, it is revealed to him that his hearing is God's hearing. Oh, it making sense now, huh? His sight is God's sight. His speech is God's speech. His life is God's life. His knowledge is God's knowledge. His will is God's will. His power is God's power. And that God possesses all these attributes fundamentally. And then he knows that all the aforesaid qualities are borrowed. You only borrowed your little 5 limbs, your little arm, leg, arm, head. And metaphorically, they are applied to you, whereas they really belong to God. Oh, man. You see how deep that is? You think you own this body, but really it belongs to the Most High. These things have been metaphorically applied to you, not metaphorically applied to God. He owned the body. This is what we talking about, the reality of arm, leg, arm, head, family. Now this is a first portion of my measure that I'm coming forth with. We got to make it plain. Like I said, I showed you in the Bible. Now I'm showing you Quranically some of the statements that everybody made. So now when you hear those few of you who are within the sound of my voice, when you hear after this, because let me go there, man. This is a sound hadith right here. We went over this one here recently too. This is coming from a companion of Prophet Muhammad by the name of Abu Hurairah. And this is what he said that had been conveyed to him by Prophet Muhammad. He said that Allah the Most High says that he who is hostile to a friend or a wali of mine, I declare war against. He said, my slave approaches me with nothing more beloved to me than what I have made obligatory for him. And my slave keeps drawing near to me with voluntary works until I love him. And when I love him, I am his hearing in which he hears, his sight with which he sees, his hand with which he seizes, and his foot with which he walks. If he asks me, I will surely give to him. And if he asks refuge in me, I will surely protect him. That's God saying. He said when he loves somebody, he become the hearing in which man hears. This is how you know God. You listen, you hear now with a godly ear. You see now with God's sight. Huh? Your hands, everything you're seasoning, where you're walking, where you're going. You seize for the cause of God. You move in whatever direction you move it in for the cause of the Most High. So therefore, again, he is expressing his will through you. God man, God woman. I'm making it plain now. This ain't stuff I'm making up. I'm giving you authentic sources that cannot be denied. If you deny this right here, then something wrong with you, right? We ain't talking about the Lord family that's listening within the sound of my voice. But we showed you in the Piscean records, God manifested himself in the physical form numerous times before the New Testament, before Jesus. We could have went through some more, but we didn't want to go through it. You know, we can show you statements where it say the Lord is a man of war in the Old Testament. You know, but that's a whole nother measure. He's always expressed his will through the human being. That's what I'm talking about. That don't leave our sisters out neither. Here's a drawing right here. We was talking about the eyes of God according to the Bible. Now let's see what they have to say about the eyes of God, you know, Islamically. See, this is what we talking about. When we say monotheism, the oneness of God, God is one, but he's oneness with his creation through his deific will. And this is the Quranic reflection on the ayat 52 and 48 before Allah's eyes, right? Which is wasabir lakumi rabika finaka bi ayunin, which is, and wait patiently for the judgment of your Lord, for surely you are before our eyes, right? You know, a lot of time you'll hear a plural of majesty being demonstrated in the Quran where it says we, you know, or it did our, you know, it used that expression when Allah is speaking, just like in the book of Genesis when it say, let us make man of our in our image. That's called a plural of majesty, right? So it says this verse tells the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to be patient in the face of all the accusations against him. The enemy spread many false things about him, wanting others to believe that he was a poet, sorcerer, a madman, anything but a prophet sent by God, which they accused all of them. They even accused Prophet Noble Drew Ali of some of them things. It said they hoped that the accusation would make people doubt the authenticity of his words. They troubled him in many ways in the face of opposition and rejection, just like they try to do with me. Oh, he's pseudo. You know, same thing. When you righteous and you upright and you really about it, that's the type of energy they bring. But when you got the truth, man, they can't stop the truth, no matter what they say. Because it's always going to be those who want the truth. It says they troubled him in many ways in the face of opposition and rejection. The prophet is told to be firm and steadfast. This patience would steel him and enhance his resolve to spread the mission. You see what I'm saying? So basically, that's why he was told be in the wait for judgment, for surely he was basically under the watch of the Most High. Rabika Fayanaka bi Ayinun. You see? Rabika dealing with your Lord. That's what that is. Like Rabbi, Rabika. Same thing in the Hebrew. It's synonymous with the Arabic. You see? And it even says it here. It says there are two things mentioned in this verse which help in maintaining the resolve of patience, that the judgment of Allah Azza wa Jal will come to pass according to Alama Tabatabai. In Tafsir al-Mizan, it states in the judgment will be regarding the rejectors of faith, and they will be granted time to accept what would eventually have a seal on their hearts due to continuous rejection. And it says that the prophet is under Allah's watchful eye. Almighty is full aware of what's happening and is in complete control. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not heedless of all that happens and its effects on the prophet. Under the watchful eye of Allah. So even in the Quran, we see these types of characteristics being given to the Creator. You see, we just showed you what the Most High said, that he expressed his will through man in the hadith that I just quoted from. You know, in the words of the Sufi scholars as well. There's also a measure in here that deals with what we call the speech of Allah. The Quran is actually called the speech of Allah to Muslims. You see? And it go into certain things here. We'll go into it a little bit. It says it's articulated or its exalted meanings that derive existence from the existence of the exalted self, right? That's a question. It says the first group said that speech is attributed to Allah, and they derive existence from the existence of the exalted self. He, glory be to him, speaks whenever it pleases him with his power. Allah, glory be to him, called Moses and called Adam with a voice, but the words and the voice he uttered are an attribute of his exalted self, unparalleled and cannot be compared to words and voices of creatures, right? This is what they'll tell you, but yet he's speaking through creatures. So even though he speak through a prophet, Moses or Muhammad or Jesus or whatever, though they speak in our language, their language is more exalted in a godly form of language because God is speaking through them. That's why you'll hear me say a lot of time that a translation of the Quran is not the Quran. A translation of the Bible in its original state is not the original text of the Torah. You know, because this is the voice of the Creator himself. And the only one really the only one that can actually come forth and express that is the one that he expresses will through with clarity. Everybody else just studying, you know, what the possibilities are in this particular time. And if we follow whatever it is that we're able to be guided by in spirit, then we can become better people as a result of that. But frankly, you know, God was using these prophets and men as his conduits, and his words were more elevated. For example, just because he revealed something in the Arabic or the Hebrew, don't mean your common Arab understood what was being said. We had one time on Sarnetta channel, he trying to speak carnal, earthly Arabic, you know, in the place of Quranic Arabic, which is two different things. The guy they call Morpheus on there. You know, you don't communicate divine language with earthly language. In other words, you know, you learning everyday Arabic ain't got nothing to do with knowing Quranic Arabic, because you got Arabs who know Arabic, but they don't know the Quran. Just because you know Arabic don't mean you know the dialect that was revealed in divinity. That's just like when you deal with the Torah. You know, that's different than trying to speak street language and just say a Masoretic or Yiddish demonstration. You know what I mean? That's different from what the Most High revealed in the words. But see, they can fool the people that don't know no better. You know, so even though a book may be revealed to a people in their language, it's revealed in a divine dialect. Just like you got many different versions of the Spanish language, you know, you got Cubans, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, and so forth and so on. Now imagine if you done seen a lot of these people communicate, certain things you may say in Cuban don't mean the same thing in Puerto Rican language. You don't want to use the term pistola, for example, you know, with a Cuban, the same way you use it with a Puerto Rican, because they might think you saying something totally different. So it's the same thing when you deal with divine dialect. God's divine dialect, though it may be revealed through a particular vehicle of language, is more exalted than the language itself. That's basically what's being said here. So it says other Quranic verses denote that Allah, praise and glory be to him, really called Moses from behind a veil and not through angels. Because it says that in the Quran that Allah speaks to man through man, but it says also he either speaks by sending angels or messengers that have been inspired, or he speaks from behind a veil. That's what it says in the Quran. You see? So, nevertheless, it says when Moses came to the place appointed by us and his Lord addressed him, it says, so the call is proved here. It must be an audible voice. Moreover, Allah spoke to Adam and Eve, and this took place after the sin had been committed, right? The holy books are the speech of Allah, and he spoke their words with all their meanings and expression through his own voice. Allah spoke in the Torah, in the Hebrew language, and in the Quran, in the comprehensive Arabic tongue. It says, and when people recite it, they read it in their own language, since it is Allah's speech. It is his book, because it had been written in the preserved tablet in the copies of the Quran. You know, it goes on. It says the second group said that Allah, glory be to him, speaks, commands, forbids, warns, promises, threatens by his speech, the eternal, ancient, unparalleled speech that cannot be compared to that of his creatures. It is neither uttered through a voice that is produced by the vibration of air, friction of objects, nor by the movement of lips and tongue, although the Quran is recited by tongues with written books and memorized by hearts. It is ancient and eternal, deriving its existence from the existence of Allah, and it would never be separated, fragmented, nor altered through conveyance to the hearts and papers. They said that Moses heard Allah's speech without a voice, just as the righteous see it, the exalted self, Allah, right? It says, without an essence in the hereafter, Allah's speech is the words of the soul, but voices are fragmented in the letters, which serve as indicators and signals and gestures used for the same purpose. Furthermore, it says, if we can understand Allah has an all-knowing power, then we can perceive that he has the power to speak with everything that denotes expressions. The speech of Allah derives its existence from his existence. It's ancient, and so are all his attributes. As it is impossible to think Allah is subject to events of change, thereupon Allah's speech is ancient and the speech of self-existent. What is recent are the voices that denote it. For instance, when Allah says to Moses, therefore in my presence put off thy shoes, this is a request that had been formulated by Allah since eternity, and Moses was addressed after he had been created. So it goes on, family, and speaking on different examples of those who speak on what we call the speech of Allah. But nevertheless, we can't deny that man speaks, Allah speaks to man through man, so to speak, is what we're getting at. His reality is that he's there, but yes, it's using the term speech, which come forth from a mouth. And in the Bible, they would call it the mouth of God. There's a lot of scriptures on that, right? Here's a measure here where they have a little blog that was going on dealing with the limbs of Allah, because they have these things they mention as well, in the Islamic teaching. I'm just showing you that these same things that are expressed in the Bible, though these are different texts, in both traditions coming from the Abrahamic faith, they express, the attributes of the Creator as being synonymous with the attributes of what we see in the average man. It said, does Allah have arms and legs like us or not, right? This is the question and the answer they was asking. It says, all perfect praise be to Allah, Lord of the worlds. I testify that there is none worthy of worship except Allah, and that Muhammad is his slave and messenger. Allah, the Most High and the Most Gracious, should not be described except by what he described himself in the book of the Quran, or by what the Prophet described him in the Sunnah. However, as far as we know, there's no description neither in the Quran nor the Sunnah which mentions that Allah has arms. And that's somebody being disingenuous, because it does speak in hadith and other areas. You know, the strength of Allah in the arm. It says, I'll show you in a minute some of the things that was being said. Excuse me. Pardon the body. So it says, Allah the Most High and the Most Gracious should not be described except by what he described himself with. It says in his book Quran, and by what the Prophet described him in the Sunnah. However, as far as we know, well, he did put that there. So we'll give him a point for that. There is no description neither in the Quran nor the Sunnah which mentions that Allah has arms, as far as he know. Well, we just came to you a few minutes ago with a hadith, you know, that spoke volumes in this. And matter of fact, they actually quoting it right here. As for the leg, Abu Hurairah narrated that the Prophet said in a long hadith, as for the fire in hell, it would not be filled till Allah puts his leg over it, whereupon it would say, kat, enough. And that time it will be filled and its different parts will come closer to each other. That's why I always like to see Abu Hurairah, because he went into a lot of stuff, you know, that go a little deeper than the eyes can see, so to speak. So you're going to say that you ain't seen nothing according to your knowledge, then you go and quote Abu Hurairah talking about the leg of Allah. Well, that's real genius. This person right here that did this. It says in another narration reported by Anas, the Prophet said, people will be thrown in the hellfire, and the hellfire will say, are there some more? Until Allah will put his foot or his leg on it. And thereupon it will say enough and enough. So it's given the great God again attributes of a human body. Right there. You know? And then it tell you there's nothing like him. He's all seeing, he's all knowing. But even in the Islamic tradition, they'll tell you we made in the image of Allah. So this is both biblically and Quranically. The people who are translating the books, not the Most High himself, but a lot of the men are trying to justify, you know, their position instead of taking it as the scriptures say. And so this is why you have a lot of confusion, because they're trying to rationalize, you know, these realities that I'm talking out of about out of the book. And this have man trying to constantly look to a spook being as opposed to looking for salvation coming from the end of your own arm. And God utilizing you. You know, it says it's not fit that Allah speak to a man. Unless let me show. Let me show. I'm just do it like this here. I have to go on. Here it is right here. And they got all the commentary in here. I got Yusuf Ali. It says, it's not fitting for a man that Allah should speak to him except by inspiration, or from behind a veil, or by the sending of a messenger to reveal with Allah's permission what Allah wills, for he is the Most High, most wise. So a lot of times when we went into the book, you know, of the Piscean records, and Abraham was on the manifest, he spoke to Abraham from behind the veil in the relation dealing with a human body in the form of a messenger, so to speak. You know, but that's a man of God he's speaking to like that. Everybody ain't got that privilege. So I'm going to go further. I want to go to this next one right here. The hand of Allah is over their hands. Notice this is coming from Surah Fatah 48 ayat 10, when they say the hand of Allah is over their hand. There they go again, giving Allah Human attributes. If he got a hand, he got an arm. So that automatically debunked the other brother that we just was reading by, even though he had already debunked himself. And so this is what caused people to be confused, because they don't want to accept the reality of God, and it's being expressed right there in the books. It's already expressed. So what you running from? What you scared of? If it's said in the book, it's said in the book. You see? So anyway, this right here was dealing with a hadith, and they was talking about tafsir, breaking down what it means when it says Allah's hand is over their hands. You know, it says that this ayat has more than one meaning. It could be Allah's help given to them, Allah's power with them, Allah's knowledge of their conditions and intentions. And after the seminar finished, one brother told the sheikh that his interpretation of this ayat goes against Aqidah, the creed of A.L.L.A.H. So somebody got at him because he was talking about the hand of Allah, sheikh. You know, because he didn't like the way it was said or whatever was said. You know, and it's constantly being stated that God expresses power through, you know, men. You know, any sheikh, imam, and so forth, they moving on the will of God according to the teaching of Islam. You know, so when one get up there and they go to speak in the highest degree of monotheism, it's for one to say that Allah is speaking to him as opposed to the man behind the podium. So in other words, you looking beyond, like for example, right now, you know, for one to accept what I'm saying as God speaking to them, that ain't got nothing to do with me being the supreme reality. That's the Most High using me as a vessel to speak to men. And they looking past my flesh and saying God is speaking to me, not Brother Shahid or Brother Commission. You feel me? So when you in a high state of monotheism, you can see the will of the Most High behind everything in creation. And that's the most positive way of thinking, because when you think like that, you understand that nothing happened or take place where the God that we recognize as God is not present. See? It's simple. But somebody already ready to get at this shake, as we see. So after he said that what he said went against the creed of Al-Sunnah, while Jamaat adheres to the Sunnah in the Muslim mainstream, compiled with views of the Ashira, a Muslim group that bases its creedal issues on logic, the Sheikh was annoyed and replied that Al-Mawardi and Ibn Kathir mentioned this interpretation in their books, because Ibn Kathir is very respected in the Sunnah. So this brother had not to be learned if he didn't know. And this brother was quoting something that was already considered sound information. This goes to show you how spooky that particular brother was. So it say the man corrected him, saying that Ibn Kathir did not say that, but it is Al-Mawardi who advocated Ashira. And the debate heated and people behave aggressively, labeling the man a Christian and a Buddhist, because that's the first thing a lot of Arabs do. You know, they go to going at one when one go to bringing them high teachings like that. You know what I mean? So they said it was about to beat him, but some protected him, and Allah knows that this man wanted to explain the truth out of jealousy for Muslim Aqidah and impermissibilities to delay the declaration beyond the time of need. And the man suggested that the issue be referred to you and that they agreed. Would you please enlighten us? May Allah reward you the best. Waiting for your reply. So that's somebody that witnessed this, and they trying to get somebody to draw it. You know, and basically you had brothers, you know, go and they say, please be informed that our creed is to affirm that Allah's attributes of having a hand and other attributes stated by him in his noble book or by his messenger Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the purified Sunnah. However, this hand is such as benefits Allah's majesty without takif, descriptive of designation of Allah's attributes, tamathil, likening Allah's attributes to those of his creation, tarif, distorting of the meaning, tajir, negation of the meaning or function of Allah's attributes. We believe that there's nothing like him, that he is all hear, all seer. But when you hear and you see, this again goes back to being made in the image of God. But this goes back to doing with the qualification of such. Not that it's not possible, but who is expressing it. If it's a prophetic man, then that prophetic man was expressing the will of the Creator. But again, the Most High can use whoever he wants, me, you, or anybody, to express itself. So it say, we don't deny his attributes which he describes himself, and we do not change the words in their right places. We do not discuss the nature of his attributes. So not want to discuss the nature of the attributes of the Most High. Come on, man. If he revealed it in the book, what did the book say? It says, liken his attributes to those in creation. If you didn't want them attributes to be there, then why did you let them be translated like that? Because you had to be able to express what was being demonstrated. Without them attributes of hearing, seeing, knowing, people wouldn't know what to make of what's being said by the Creator. It's just as simple as that. He manifests his attributes through man. He speaks to man through man. You see? So, there was another drawing here. Here's a prime example right here, right? This goes in contrast to what ones try to explain out of the book. Now, this is Surah 8, Ayat 17. You say, it is not Yea who slew them, it was Allah. When thou threwest a handful of dust, it was not thy act, but it was Allah's, in order that he might test the believers by gracious trial from himself. For Allah is he who heareth and knoweth all things. So here is telling you, in war, when somebody was able to get the upper hand of the adversary, it wasn't them, it was Allah. You see what I'm saying? When they grabbed a handful of dust and they tossed it up or whatever the case may be, it wasn't them, it was Allah. Even though it was them that did the act, the grand idea that precludes the monotheism telling you, yeah, that you physically did it, but really it was the Most High doing it. You feel me? Just like in the Bible or the Piscean record where he said that he would make Israel his battle axe. You see what I'm saying? It's the same thing. The battle axe and sword by which he will break nations. See? So it ain't you who did it. It was Allah doing it. That's basically what it's saying. You ever hear the term, when two of you or more of you are gathered together, the Most High is present? Say that in the Quran too. He's present because he's present in the individuals. When you say Emmanuel, Emmanuel means God with us because God is in us. Come on, man. Let's stop playing. So when you understand, this is the Quran saying this now, outside of the hadiths and the other little side information I read to you, it is not you who slew them, it was Allah. In other words, he was acting through your arm, leg, arm, head. And we can look at that in every situation from a positive standpoint. It ain't got to be about no war. If I went out right now and I gave a whole bunch of charity, it wasn't me that gave the charity, it was Allah that gave the charity. Because if it wasn't him, I wouldn't have nothing to give. If I went out and I fed the whole city right now, it ain't me that fed the city, it was Allah that fed the city. He used me as a conduit through my arm, leg, arm, head. And when the people, if they've been starving, they ain't had nothing to eat, and they look at this as blessing, they're going to be talking about, thank God, praise God. They ain't going to be talking about me. They're going to be talking about the God that was working through me. So this is the stuff that take us out of spookism, and we recognize what the reality of God is. And the reality of God is that he works through us. That's how we know he exists. Ain't no miraculous hokum pokum being demonstrated. Well, this stuff is just falling out of the sky, family. I'm sorry. We just giving it to you blood raw. And as long as you think like that right there, you got a bad idea of the supreme being. And that was taught to you by the European. And that's why you serve gods outside of the self, as opposed to serving the great God or the higher self of consciousness, Godhead within the self. Even in the Quran, remember, he told the angels to prostrate before man. He wasn't talking about the physical body. He was talking about the God spirit, himself within the man. Iblis was the only one that disobeyed. Talking about, you made me from fire and him from clay. I ain't bowing down to that. And so you basically refuse to submit to the God that he put in man. You know, a lot of that had to do with why people can't have no good relationship with each other too, between a man and a woman, because the man don't want to submit to the God in the woman, and the woman don't want to submit to the God in the man. They think they submitting to the physical flesh. And so they don't honor, the characteristics that are displayed through each other based upon what they don't like about the physical. What they don't like about something, they ain't submitting to the God within each other. Reason why you see children disobedience in that state with their parents is because they don't see the God, the authority of the Most High in their parents. And their parents giving their seed hellacious condition because they can't see God in their seed. The reason why we can't get along with each other as a people is because we can't see the God within each other. We see the physical body. Some people, if they caught up in the flesh, they get jealous of what they see in the physical body. They like to criticize the physical body. He fat, he skinny, he tall, he short. You know what I mean? He look good, he ugly, she look good, she ugly, she pretty. All that type of stuff right there. That ain't got nothing to do with the God within somebody. Come on now, we're gonna make it plain now. You've been looking past God and been seeing him the whole while, family. We're gonna make this demonstration plain, family. I'm telling you, in every book they've been teaching this now. This ain't something I made up. Look right here. The side of Allah, the face of Allah, the hands of Allah. And this is what they'll tell you. Denote the Holy Prophet and the Imams. In other words, they saying that when you speak of the side of Allah, the face of Allah, the hands of Allah, it's saying that this is the body that is composed of the people that's working under the authority of God in Islam. And it's the same thing when you go into the Piscean records. They give a whole parable about the body. The eyes and the hands and so forth and so on. Being the house of God, the temple of God. So the same teachings being taught, but under different doctrine. It's saying the same thing in different ways. You see, our people just can't get beyond it because they caught up on names. See, they don't see God within the messenger. They done got caught up in, that's coming from the Bible, that's coming from the Quran, that's coming from this book, that's coming from that book. But when you raise to a state of elevation, you see God speaking the same language everywhere you look. And that's what's wrong with Commission. If y'all really want to know, that's what's wrong with Commission. Commission see the same thing being said. I don't see the division. I graduated from that type of thinking 30 years ago. So when you see me up here speaking, he putting all this stuff together. No, I just see the unity where you can't see the unity. I see the oneness where you can't see the oneness, because the Most High put me in that particular type of journey to be able to see that. And I ain't saying that because you can't see the oneness. I'm saying that because evidently you don't. If you think I'm your enemy because you hear the name or the word Islam, or you hear Prophet Noble Drew Ali, you think that I'm automatically opposed to you. That means that you don't recognize the God within yourself. So I know you ain't going to see the God within me. You feel me? You can be self-righteous and pious and whatever it is you say you stand on. But one thing about Commission, he ain't going to never be in opposition to somebody for what they stand on, because I understand. I understand where they are along the way, for one. And I understand also the truth is the only thing that changes not. And the same truth has been spoken to man many times over throughout the world in different cultures. They just have their own way of expressing it through the garment in which they see fit. It ain't for me to try to change that. Because at the end of the day, we all saying the same thing. Only way you say, no, bro, they ain't saying this, is because you ain't reached that level. We understand. That's where you are at this particular time. You might get a little better later on, but that's where you at. You think you right as everybody? You think you're righter than everybody? Everybody else unbelievers and heathens, according to you now. But I know better, and I'm looking at you, and I pity that thought pattern in somebody that think that they on an elevated level when all actuality you really lowest the totem pole. Because if what you study haven't taught you to love instead of hate, then you ain't teaching what Yehoshua or Yahshua was teaching. You ain't teaching what Muhammad or Moses or none of them prophets were teaching. You teaching your own perverse version of what you say they taught, based upon what you choose or deem to be the truth. And then you wonder why you catching so much hell in your life. You perpetrating the fraud of being divine and righteous, but it's hard for you to be able to move ahead because all the while your heart is full of hatred and bitterness and gall. And so nothing that you set out to do, you can't accomplish because God ain't with you. I ain't saying this to beat nobody up or be mean, family. I'm just telling the truth. You can dress it up how you want to when you get in social media, but at the end of the day, when you shut that laptop down, that computer off, you know the hell that you living in. And it's coming from your thinking. That's all this little mess you're about tonight. Trying to show you how to think like a god instead of, the book written From Niggas to Gods. We trying to get our people to thinking like God instead of thinking like niggas and everything else they try to call us. That's what we talking about, if you really want to know. You see? So yeah, they had also a drawing. This is one of my favorite drawings coming from the Quran when it says, in this particular ayah, this day we set a seal on their mouth and their hands will speak to us, and their feet will bear witness to what they used to do. Goodness gracious. That's what I was just talking about. You see? And that's Surah Yasin, ayah 65. So if your limbs, your 5 limbs, gonna bear witness against you and testify, that means everything that you did, the way you move, all this had to do with your actions, your deeds. Do you know that there are 2 angels in Islam, at least, that are called the Karim and Katibun? They record all of your actions. That's the only book that you really have the ability to alter. You can't alter the book of predestination, Law A.L.L.A.H, Al-Kitab, the mother of the books. You can't do that. But the book that has to do with your deeds, all you got to do is live upright, and you can curtail a lot of that bad karma. So you can really change that book, but everything you doing, your deeds are often being recorded. So this book, according to us, is going to be given back to us in a record. When we leave the plane of things made manifest, you're going to be reading your own book and what you used to do, and your limbs, your mouth, and your heart going to bear witness against you. The same thing you got control, or think you got control of now, going to bear witness against you. So who going to be judging you? Arm, leg, arm, head. Yourself. Allah. Who going to be casting you into hell? Arm, leg, arm, head. Yourself. Allah. But for the righteous, every day we wake up is a day of judgment. That means that we have our mind in a state of judging between what is right and wrong. You know what I mean? We using our thought, man, to make sure that we better than we was yesterday. Then we ain't got to worry about our ways, acts, and deeds, basically turning coat on us. And that ain't even after this plane. If you're doing wrong in this world, your ways, acts, and your deeds, meaning what you do with your hands, where you go with your feet, what you speak with your mouth, what you hear with your ears, even while you in the flesh right now, if you ain't careful, them things will bear witness against you. So this is not spookism, family. We bringing you into the reality of God, the presence of God, omnipresence of God, and always being in you, But man is truth and falsehood strangely mixed because he in the flesh. So he can go either 360 degrees into the darkness, or he can go in the 360 degrees in the light and continue to ascend in that particular drawing. But it's all on you. Now I want to take this thing to Kemet. This is where I'm gonna close it out, right? Because before we go into dealing with the Piscean records of the Quran, and we were dealing with the teachings of, man being expressed as he was expressed biblically and canonically, those physical attributes that were put on the creator. Kemet was already teaching this. Y'all need to get y'all hand on this book if you ain't never read it. It's called The Egyptian Cosmology in the Animated Universe by the brother Mustafa Gadala. This cat here straight fire. You see? I'm going to go into this in a second. But I want to show you something before I go there. So now when you see certain things like this here, when y'all heard me talking about this, anybody that like to criticize Islam, it's the first image they pull up. Oh, Allah is a moon god. They show this picture. Unbeknownst to them, this is actually dealing with the expression of the thru, who just so happen to be the one that is governing the energy, and they personified it in a form. This is how our ancestors expressed it. They had deities that express different parts of nature, and we call them netter. If you take the attribute, in netter, in nature, and you take all the vowels out of it, you still gonna get that ENTR. But nevertheless, this is very important. You got a lot of people will tell you, if this was supposed to be an expression in hieroglyphic language, they say, well, this represents the letter Ah. The little arm they be talking about in the Egyptian hieroglyphics. Y'all already know we don't feed into that nonsense, but we like to poke at them every now and then. So if y'all believe that right there, you saying this is Ah, and then he got Ra in his hand right there, and we know the L is interchangeable with the letter R, so Allah. So yeah, you've been saying this is Allah for those who like to attack Islam. Well, it make a whole lot of sense now, don't it? And y'all already seen me break it down. Right here. They say this is R right here, right? Now this is a word, by the way. This ain't even an alphabet. This is actually a person, place, and thing, because that's what these symbols really represent. You know what I mean? So it say, thus was that letter, A, became so sacredly associated with the idea of deity, who was himself called A.L.L.A.H, or Allah, the generic supreme name of God, meaning it was a name that everybody used, basically, as worshipped among the eldest patriarch. The life of Allah, or God, was the life that the true A.L.L.A.H always desired to cultivate and lead. Hence, A.L.L.A.Hism, or the life of God in the soul of man, was the most ancient mode of religion. It telling you recognizing God within the self is the true aspect of religion. You see what I'm saying? I'm going into the essence and showing you what they're trying to hide. Allah. You see? And I did it here too. See, they talking about the Waj of Allah, the Ru Allah, the Eye of Allah, coming straight out of Kemet. Waj in the Arabic, Wajet, the Eye of Ra, or the Eye of Heru, the omnipresence of God in man. There you go again. Ayah. And that's where your Ayah, Iya, Ya, La, Allah, 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 and Allah come from. That's how it evolved, family. Facts. It's dealing with the omnipresence of God in man, God with us, because God is in us. That's what this measure is about, family. Stop looking for your salvation to come from the arm of another man, at the end of the arm of another. It's at the end of your own arm. Extend some help to yourself. That's what they doing over here. And Noble Drew Ali, he took that demonstration and put it in his heart. You see what I'm saying? Y'all think it's a game? They was holding that demonstration out there. Watch this. All I got to do is type it in. That's how popular my prophet is. You don't believe him? Look at it. It came up right there. You see it? You see it? So while the deity had that demonstration in his hand, holding it out, the prophet put that demonstration in his heart. You know what I mean? Signs and symbols are for conscious mind and men and women of understanding. You see? You can't get this stuff right here nowhere else. We're getting ready to close out in a minute. I'm going to give you some more attributes. This is actually from a lesson I put together a long time ago. Now, I actually went over this one right here already, but I just went further into detail of it right here. And I'm going to go over it again just for the sake of going over it. And this is actually a teaching where I was building on the 5, and our flag and everything, showing you where all this stuff here come from. The gesture of greeting from the heart chakra, the day star of ancient Kemet, and showing you that this express God utilizing man. See, that's the macrocosm. Man is the microcosm. So you see, I say the ancient Comedian teachings of Muhammad were preserved. Sahih Bukhari. Now, Sahih Bukhari is accepted by all Arabs. They believe that this is the gospel when it comes to hadith. Sahih Bukhari, listen to what it said. It's the same thing again. Narrated by that guy, Abu Hurairah, Allah's apostle sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I would declare war against him who shows hostility to a pious worshiper of mine. So y'all already know them prayer warriors. When they on the manifest, if somebody's showing hostility to them, don't nothing go good for them. They end up living a life of hell because they mess with the wrong one. That's what this basically saying. And the most beloved things with which my slave comes near to me is what I have enjoined upon him. My slave keeps coming on closer to me through performing the wafil, praying or doing extra deeds besides what is obligatory. Meaning they're super worshiper, right? It says, till I love him. And so I become his sense of hearing. And I emphasize the head, right? Because the hearing is in the head with which he hears. His sense of sight, which is also in the head, which he sees. This is what Allah is saying. He becomes your hearing, he becomes your sight, and his hand. Allah saying he becomes your hand, your right and your left, right? And with which he grips, and his leg with which he walks. Allah saying he becomes your head, your leg, all of that's arm, leg, arm, head, family. It says, and if he asks me, I will give him. If he asks my protection, refuge, I will protect him. Give him my refuge. That means he gonna give you the saving power to save yourself. And I don't hesitate to do anything as I hesitate to take the soul of the believer, for he hates death, and I hate the disappointed. That's that arm, leg, arm, head, family. Now, one thing that we all have in common, whether you deal with the name of Yahweh, Yod-He, Wav-He, right? You notice that it forms the image of what looks like what I would call a linguistic silhouette of the limbs. That would be the head, that's the arms, and that's the legs, right? That's the trunk of the body, so to speak, right? But then over here in Arabic, you got the same thing being demonstrated here. That's the letter A, Aleph, Aleph, Lam, Aleph, Ha, right? And the H looked like a little turban up there on his head. You think this stuff is stuff that's just made up to be made up? Come on, stop the madness. This is called the tetragrammaton or the pentagrammaton. Again, you see the eyes in there. That's forming the symbol of a man, family. All these symbols of sacred geometry are telling you that God is in you. And you'll let somebody tell you, oh, that's some devil stuff, demonic stuff. Telling you that God is in you. We didn't tell you to worship no goats or none of that foolery there. Here it go right here. Then when we talking about the face of Allah, right? All that is on the earth will perish, but the face of your Lord will abide forever, ever, full of majesty, bounty, and honor. To Allah belong the east and the west, whithersoever ye turn, there is his presence, or the face of Allah. Because the word translated presence is also used for face. It says, for Allah is all pervading, all knowing. They go to commentary. The word translated presence is Waj. Going back to that word in Kemet, Wajet, the eye of Allah, literally face. You see? Then it goes again, whosoever submits his whole self to Allah and is a doer of good, he will get his reward with his Lord. It says, on such shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. The whole self is the same word, Waj, basically translated as whole self here, presence or face. So in other words, the whole self, your whole self within yourself is the presence of God. Within yourself, you can bear witness to the face of God, just like Jacob was able to see God face to face. So all these scriptures and all this information telling you that God is inside of you or within you, then why is it that you haven't tapped into the frequency of the supreme being within yourself? Because you're too busy worshiping gods outside of the self. That's why. You worshiping at the shrine of polytheism. And at the same time, you think you demonstrate monotheism. When real monotheism is you demonstrating your oneness with God. It states the word translated self as waj, a comprehensive Arabic word. It means literally face, but it may imply countenance or favor. See, when you go within the self, you end up having the countenance of God, flesh divine. You can see it. You can see the glow. You fall in favor of the Creator, and blessings begin to manifest in abundance. Your very presence brings blessings. I remember there was one Muslim brother. I knowed him since I was a young whippersnapper. And I used to be out there acting crazy. But he still was strong in the way of life. In fact, his nephew ended up being one of my best friends. But it's been a minute since I've been out there. This brother would be at the flea market. He'd be reading the Quran in Arabic. You know, he was probably in his 50s by that time. The brother probably up there, Abdullah. And I come over there and I would stand beside him and people would start coming. And he say, Aki, he say, out of all the time I've been out here, I never had that many people come over here. He said, you got the spirit of barakat, blessings upon you. I say, well, I wish I could blame them type of blessings to myself. But nevertheless, you know, countenance and favor from God come from being able to know the God. That's why Noble Drew Ali taught the Moors, know thyself and thy Father God Allah. Because when you know the self, you know the God within the self. So look, here it is again. That word was self, face, countenance, favor, honor, glory, presence, as applied to God. Perhaps for the cause of, for the sake of, the first part, the beginning, nature, inner being, essence, self. So no matter where you turn, that's why I say to Allah belong the east or the west. Whithersoever you turn is the presence of Allah. Because you can turn in whatever direction you want to turn on the physical, but God is in you. That's why it says that. Here I understand the meaning of face expresses the personality and the whole inner self of man. That inner being, that self, that essence, that's where you look into the face of man. You ain't just looking at the flesh of man. If you look at the essence of man, who made him? Who made you? God. Apple seeds made apple trees, right? And apple trees produce apple seeds, right? So put that in the context of God. Here's another from Abu Hurairah. I told y'all that's why I got him in here. He said, narrated by Abu Hurairah, the prophet said, Allah says, I am just as my slave thinks I am. Uh-oh. In other words, if you think that the supreme being is present, then he present. If you think the supreme being is somewhere out there in space at a distance, ain't got nothing to do with being in control of your affair, then that's where he at. But don't get mad if you don't have I feel the presence of the Creator. You don't feel like you being blessed. He say, I am just as my slave thinks I am. I am able to do for him what he thinks I can do for him. It's Orthodox Islam. Now watch this. It says, and I am with him if he remembers me. Allah said, I am with him if he remembers me. If he remembers me in himself. All right, now you Orthodox Muslims teaching that spookism. Right here in the Sahih Bukhari Hadith book, if he remembers me in himself, I too will remember him in myself. And if he remembers me in a group of people, I will remember him in a group that is better than they. And if he comes one span nearer to me, I go 1 cubit nearer to him. If he comes 1 cubit nearer to me, I go a distance of 2 outstretched arms near to him. If he comes to me walking, I go to him running. Again, Allah utilizing, these attributes of the legs. If you meet Allah walking, he come to you running. Come on, family. If you remember him within yourself, he will remember you within himself. Allah also said, according to the teachings of Al-Islam, we know the trick, we know the teaching now. He is closer to man, nearer to man than he is himself. Allah say he's nearer to man than man is to himself. He's near to man in his very own jugular vein. That means he got to be the oxygen and the blood flow, the life force that's flowing through your very being. So let's get out of the spookism, family. I promise you, if you start thinking like this right here, like I'm telling you right now, watch how blessings start to manifest. Because now you know how to speak to God. Now you know how to talk to him and how to listen to him, because he's been there present with you all the while. He's been there all the while. And all these prophets been trying to tell you the same thing, even though they spoke it in parables. You just didn't want to hear. You didn't want the message. You see? And I already done spoke on this right here, about Allah speaking to man from behind a veil, and how he send people. So yeah, family, that's real talk. Even in the Quran, in the other portion of the Quran, Surah 35, Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. Well, what you think the heavens and the earth? The heaven represents your mind, the earth represents your body. Allah is the light of your mind and your body, people. The parable of his light is as there were a niche, and within it a lamp, and enclosed in a glass, and that glass were a brilliant star. Then I just show you man expressed as the 5-pointed open green star. He don't have a 6-point because he ain't got his nakedness exposed. That means he's beyond his lower self. That's why it's a 5-point star instead of a 6. Nothing wrong with the 6, but it's just showing that we have mastered the lower self so we don't have to expose ourselves. So it says, lit from a blessed tree, an olive neither of the east nor of the west, whose oil is well nigh luminous. Light upon light. Allah doeth guide whom he will to his light. The light is in you, family. Allah doeth set forth parable for men. And Allah know all things. Lit is such a light in houses which Allah has permitted to be raised to honor, for celebration in them of his name. In them he is glorified in the mornings and the evening. It ain't talking about your physical house. It's talking about this body that's called the house of the Most High. Lit is the light of God in them. So Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. Ra, all seeing eye, third eye, right? The niche represent the mental plane, the soul, the Ka in ancient Kemet, and the lamp or the light represents spirit plane, spirit man. That's the Ba. Then you got the glass of the enclosure. That's that star, the physical plane, which is the body, the Sahu, flesh divine. You got the brilliant star, divine apparatus, what we call the Merkaba, the vehicle, the day star, the ancient Comedian order, the olive tree, the divine luminous infinite wisdom of Islamism, the house of Allah permitted to be raised to honor, the one temple mentioned by Noble Drew Ali, or the Grand Major Temple, a perfected man. Man, I wrote this like 15 years ago, family. You know what I mean? But we got to give it to you. We got to give it to you plain. And I love this one right here. A lot of them, boy, this one right here sure enough make our Orthodox Muslim family want to holler Allahu Akbar and come after you with the scimitar right here. Abdullah bin Masud reported that the Jew scholar came to Allah's apostle and said, Muhammad, Al-Bul Qasim, that was another name of Prophet Muhammad, Qasim, verify Allah, the exalted and glorious, would carry the heavens in the day of judgment upon one thing, in the earth upon one thing, in the mountain and the trees upon one thing, in the ocean and the moist of the earth upon one finger, and in fact the whole of creation upon one finger. And then he would stir them and say, I am your Lord, I am your Lord. So this Hebrew was asking Prophet Muhammad, to basically verify, God saying he got all these things on his finger, and saying, I'm your Lord, I'm your Lord. And he said, thereupon Allah's messenger smiled at this Israelite. And he said, what that scholar has said, he has recited this verse. And they honor not Allah with the honor due to him. The whole earth will be in his grip on the day of resurrection, and the heaven rolled up in his right hand. Glory be to him. I, and highly exalted is Ray above what they associate to him. Goodness gracious, you mean to tell me in a hadith of Islam they called Allah Ray? Do you know who Ray is? Huh? Do you know who Ray is? This is recorded in Sahih Bukhari now, the books. That's accepted by Orthodox Muslims. We're going to show you who Ray is. Hence the statement of Prophet Muhammad, glory be to him, and I highly exalted is Ray above what they associated with him. Ray is the ancient Comedian entity of the sun, also known as Ra, pronounced Ra. Ray corresponds with the ray, as in rays or beams of light from the sun. This ray is also known to the adepts as the golden beam of Ra. Ray equals Ray. Ra plus Ra equals Ru'Allah, the spirit of Allah, right? Duality of the womb of creation, which is Ram, Al-Rahman, Al-Rahim. They both come from that root Ram, most gracious, most merciful, right? Bara, man, Brahman. Abba, him, Abraham, Ibrahim. Angelic host, Rasulullah, right? Israel, Jibrael, right? Azrael, Israfil. You see, so you see the vibration of the Ra and all those measures, family. So yeah, we don't play. We do not play when it comes to these special demonstrations. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's just been powerful drawing with that. We just trying to give our people the oneness and bring them into the reality, bro, where they can see God within themselves and see that the divinity is within the self. And once we are able to see it from this standpoint, I promise you blessings will come. Your whole life will turn around when you begin to look at the reality that God has always used you as a conduit. Stop being scared of the God within you and start recognizing the God power within you. Because like we teach in our Moorish Holy Quran, man is spirit clothed with soul made in the form of arm, leg, arm, head, Allah. You see what I'm saying? Remember that, family. You got to chant it as a mantra. God speaks to man through man. Next time you see somebody acting crazy, look beyond the flesh and say, God speaks to man through man. Because even a fool can be telling you something that'll let you bear witness to the God within you if you pay attention. You see what I'm saying? So here it is right here. Our good brother said, Islamism, Noble Brown, we give honors to your family. He said, Moorish kin, the said Orthodox Muslims don't teach like this. And some of our people prefer to go to learn Islam and Arabic from these said Orthodox Muslims' beautiful teaching. Gratitude. Yeah, they ain't going to teach you this because they want you. Half of them don't know the truth. But I will tell you this here. I got to give honors to this one brother because this is one of my master teachers that I studied under for 10 years. and he's in the palace of Saudi Arabia. This brother hear the truth. And I encourage any of y'all, if you want to see one really demonstrating that, the hermeneutics, man, this brother one of the most beautiful souls, and he from Turkey. You know, this brother's right here. I studied under this brother long time ago. This brother here, and he actually he was at Florida State, he was at FAMU, but he was like the financial forecaster, so to speak. But the way this brother taught, and he put me up on a brother, and it's funny because he kind of favored the brother that he taught me about. He taught me about a sage, the sage of the ages, or the one of the ages. I'm gonna show him to you real quick. This is before I was able to come, into my Moorish American government. The teachings of Brother Betty Uzman Said Nursi. Um, and he taught on hermeneutics. This dude right here wrote some books. He basically went against Darwinism in his works. This man's so fire to where he would talk about creation, right? Because he got a book called The Supreme Sign. I got it on my thing up there. And he had man going on a journey because he wrote these books because he knew Darwinism was going to become the philosophy of the age. And so he wrote this information to refute Darwinism because he knew it was going to take root in the youth. They even got a little movie on his life, and they got a movie on his life on YouTube. And Betty Uzman Said Nursi was so cold-blooded with it, family. He would be at war and on horseback and writing these books, the Risale Nur. That's how cold-blooded he was with it, bro. And these the actual volumes of the books that he wrote. All of them fine, but I love the Supreme Sign, and I got a lot of the other stuff because I had it from the lesson the brother taught me. But this brother, though he was never considered a Sufi to himself, he never accepted them titles. He was called a sheikh because he was, like I said, he was cold-blooded with his interpretation. You got to get honors what honors are due. But he kind of remind me of Brother Nakati. It's crazy in his youth. He kind of remind me of Betty Uzman, Said Nursi. This brother Naketi Ayadeen, like I say, he is over there. That's one of the only brothers that I seen, coming from the Islamic world. And he used to say this when brothers would be arguing with each other. The Sunnis against the Nation of Islam, Nation of Islam against Sunni, and the Moors going back and forth. The brothers say, none of this matters. It doesn't matter who's Sunni, who's Nation, who's this, who's that. The only thing that matters is you and your relationship between you and Allah. That's what I respect about that particular brother, because he was never caught up into the religiosity, even though he was, he was Muslim, he was Orthodox too, but his view of tolerance, family, was through the roof compared to any other Muslim that I ever, dealt with. So I always give honors and tell people to check him out. He talked about um, the global crisis that was coming up before it took place. They had him over here, and he was the one, like I said, he was a financial forecaster. He be here talking about, well, man, wise. Listen to this. Okay, hold up. I did that before. Let me share this. I gotta share this now.
Deceived, they were kind of attracted to those pleasant desserts, but it was poisoned. But they did not really
Okay, you
understand
should
that
be able to
even
hear.
though they can actually enjoy for a while, but then in the long run, they will, in this case, harm themselves. That's what's happening with this foreclosure and losing their homes. So that's why I think, I try to basically understand the root cause of this crisis. I do not see this as a temporary, I see this as a fundamental crisis of the system, even though I do not see that ultimately this will bring the end to the system. But I think it's really important to understand what are the root cause of the system. So that's why, I kind of follow the discussion on that one, try to reflect on the issue, understand the cause. And I found it very interesting, this interesting discussion on that one. I found like in one book that it's written called Free Market Madness. So basically the idea in that one, the idea is that yes, free market is overall good, but in this case, it seems like we see free market madness. But then, and I try to figure out why the system allows such madness in the free market. And then also there's a Nobel Prize laureate, another one, wrote a book called basically explain the cause of the financial crisis as animal spirits.
Right.
So he argues that, and you will find the same thing from Alan Greenspan as well. Even Keynes himself mentioned that there is something fundamentally unpredictable in human nature, and that's why all those crises is basically coming from or as a result of human nature, and that's why it is in their argument you cannot even prevent it. You have to face it. My argument is that no, you need to really understand that. You need to really, in this case, examine human nature. You need to know what are the key elements of human nature causing such, in this case, what we call predictably irrational behaviors. Then how you can actually, in this case, come up with certain policy as a government or as an individual come up with certain behavior to prevent or certain principle to prevent such predictably irrational behaviors. So that's basically what I try to understand with this.
Well, animal instincts is a phrase that is used regularly by proponents of capitalism. They say, like democracy, which is the best way to govern that mankind has invented. Same with capitalism. It's cutthroat, but the animal instincts in a free market will always bring people who are totally impoverished up, and in the middle classes and the high classes even further up to that pole, that American dream or the Western dream of prosperity. You're saying that there should be checks and balances on that, such as regulation, for example, more oversight. And let's not forget the short-sightedness that you quoted. The G word, greed, came into being, correct?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point. The key is that we, as an economist, when we basically talk about, starting from Adam Smith, when we talk about market system, we really know, we kind of think that is, in this case, in Adam Smith's term, that self-interest is the driving force behind the invisible hand, which basically give you the best result if you do not intervene. So that's the idea behind the market system. In this case, just let the people act based on their self-interest. That's the main argument. Then ultimately, they will act in a way to maximize their self-interest, and that maximization will turn out to be the best for society overall. So that's why it's best for you as a government to basically have as little intervention as possible, and just let the market run and does everything. And I think we have seen enormous benefits or fruits of market system, particularly in United States. There's no denial of that one. And I think that you can truly explain, in this case, the success of capitalism against a failure of socialism based on the very same notion of market system. Well, one thing I want to really do, I try to separate capitalism as an ideology from market system. Market system, in this case, is basically acknowledging the law of supply and demand and letting individual consumer and producer making decision in the market. Capitalism is an ideology, basically making money as a god for people. And actually, that is a famous phrase from Karl Marx himself. He said money was, I don't know what is proper to mention because it could be misunderstood, but in his word, quote unquote, he said money was a jealous god of Jews, but capitalism made it God of everybody. So, I think it's not Jew only, it's everybody. We have those greedy people and those who really try to earn money. But the key is that the point is capitalism is a system, turn money to God and main and ultimate purpose in life. Why? Because if you want to really have a fun, because life is fun, you need to have money. So the more you work, the more money you make, the more you can buy, and the more you consume, the happier that you can be. That's basically the formula that the capital system, prescribed to people. So, but I think in this case, what I see that's capitalism in this regard is an ideology is different. That we have right now, let's say China, we have market socialism. You have socialism and still you have market system. And I think market system existed much before capitalism, but capitalism used the market system as a very effective tool to establish its promised paradise on the earth. And that's why I kind of see capitalism quite differently than market system. What I see when I look at the capitalism, I say capitalism has been successful, mainly because it recognizes certain elements of human nature. Socialism failed because it did not truly recognize those elements. And those, what I call the three pillars of capitalist systems, is self, interest, and mind. In this case, I use the self and interest separately. Self is ego. Interest is what I call the interest of elephants, or the interest of animal spirits, or Islamic terms, the interest of nafs. And then you have a mind, which is just an instrumental tool for, in this case, ego and elephant, or ego and the animal desires. So capitalism recognized those key elements of human nature, not only recognize, exploit them to the extreme, and try to create all kind of means, in this case, to ignite those elements of human nature, and actually has been very successful in terms of production and the amount of consumption. So, and it's amazing that it's like, in Islam, there is a promise of paradise, and for those who wake up early to pray early morning prayer. But if people are struggling to do that in the United States, in Western country, you see people actually wake up much earlier than that because of the promise of capitalism and because of the promise of paradise on the earth. So, and that's why I think the system will recognize the human nature and try to establish its principle based on those three pillars. So that's why I see the success of capitalism comes from this. When Adam Smith talks about self-interest, I say, no, you're not talking about self-interest as one thing. You're talking about ego, because this is an ego-driven culture and society ultimately. You're talking about the interest of animal spirits in human nature. So yes, we have something like this. Yes, in this case, the question is that should you just let these elements of your nature to basically act and do whatever they want, or should you really to have a kind of moral restriction as well. No, you ultimately need to have a moral compass. You cannot do it as a creature. So you, even if you do not have this morality from religion, you have to basically create a certain morality. Then you can, as a human being, live based on this morality. So that's why what I see ultimately, the failure of the success of capitalism come from the understanding of this key element of human nature. But the problem is that the elephant or the animal spirit in human nature is only focused on short-term interest and short-term pleasure. What I call it is a blinded to the future. Does not see tomorrow, does not see an hour later. It just thinks and acts based on the interest of the moment. So in this case, if you have such short-sighted nature, and if you let this short-sighted nature rule the human decision behavior, that's what you will get it. So, and I think that when you look at consumer behavior in a short run, it was perfectly reasonable for them to just go and benefit from this credit and to have their realm, realized.
Well, neighbors were seeing neighbors. It was the bandwagon effect, and markets had no, I guess, just the heavens were just opening up. You mentioned Marx, and you also mentioned Adam Smith. I remember seeing when this bubble, the burst housing was really happening and at its peak. There was a cartoon of, I'm trying to remember now, Marx, Adam Smith, Keynes, and the more modern Austrian economist Schumpeter. And they're discussing and they're rolling in their graves, thinking if only we had, or people had listened to them, each one of them, the world would be a much better place. Of course, you could borrow their ideas and make it into a perfect economic world model, but it doesn't happen. And the second point I would make is, with all its faults, as I said earlier, capitalism has an innate ability to reinvent itself for that particular period, doesn't it? In other words, now, as we've known that, we have short-term memories also, but hopefully we will have those checks and balances that you and I have discussed in a more profound way. It's not that there were no checks and balances, there was no regulation, but they were just taking a back seat. Am I right?
Yeah, I think that's why I don't really see the current crisis as the end for capitalism. I think that's just basically, it's not a heart attack for capitalism. It's just basically losing some blood. It's bleeding. The system is bleeding. And in this case, money is like blood in the body. And I think the system is currently working good to try to fix that.
But because it's losing blood, we don't need a Band-Aid solution, do we? We need heart surgery, for example, to fix it.
That's why what I see, you can temporarily fix the problem by preventing blood. But if you do not really understand what initially caused the bleeding, then you cannot truly solve the problem in the long term. So that's why what I see now, what we try to take as a measure is really a short-term measure, because there is a fundamental problem with the system. Those are just the sign of some problem within the system. So if we want to truly, in this case, save the system, we need to really, in this case, go deep, try to understand the root cause of the problem. What I see basically, yes, capitalism to a certain extent is successful, try to really, overcome those problems. And I think we will very soon overcome the current crisis as well. But I think there are some other crises, very deep crises and very threatening crises going on as well. But when I see the success of capitalism, I don't see as a real progress for humanity. What I see was recently I was actually taking a train in Atlanta, and I was going from I was at Terminal D, I was going to go to Terminal E, and I just didn't pay attention to the train and just jump on the train that's coming. And then I was hearing the announcement saying there's a Terminal C, and then Terminal B, and Terminal A. The train was going. It was actually making progress, but it was a regress, not a progress. And then ultimately, when it reached to the last one, it says this train is out of service. So
Happens to all of us.
I see that's exactly what's going on with capitalism.
Mm.
So there is a progress. You see, there is a progress, but that progress I see in terms of a true progress for humanity is actually is a backward, is not forward progress. So ultimately, I think what I say, you know, the success of capitalism will be its end. In other words, when the train reaches the final destination,
Mm-hmm.
bring whatever you kind of expect from capitalism to bring for you, that will be really the time they will say, yeah, the train is out of service. And I think many people now in the West start to understand that really that this train is not taking where they kind of expect them it will take.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's why they understand that kind of they're at the very end of this trip. So my argument is that in this case, basically the promise of capitalism, a promise of paradise by capitalism, is a false promise. And so we are working hard to really, you know, make money and think that ultimately we will be happier
Mm-hmm.
and accomplish, which is our ultimate goal of satisfaction in life. And we are granted by even Constitution in the United States,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So they believe that in literature, they say, call it an American paradox.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, when you look at the literature, the data, you see that despite enormous increase in wealth accumulation and in consumption, there has been even decline in subjective well-being.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, on average, every single individual now even live much better than the kings that who lived 100 years ago.
Right.
But what happened, they are not happier than
Mm-hmm.
those people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think that's what I call this is the dead end.
I see.
So, and I think that's in this case what I call this is a happiness crisis. And I see there is a happiness crisis of capitalist countries and developed countries now. And I think that is even more serious and more threatening than a financial crisis. That's
Mm-hmm.
why I personally try to focus on those crises and try to understand it. But both of them are very much related, and both of them are related to our understanding or misunderstanding of human nature.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I try to personally, you know, focus on this one and try to really understand the main cause of both crises and see whether there is
Yep.
any solution.
We can certainly talk about that subject matter, which I thought was highly interesting. I know about numbers and I know what we read as laymen about capitalism, but when I read the subject matter of your research, we will talk about that, um, I guess, soon, how understanding what makes people happy. Just because you have tons of money, does that mean you are happier than when you were living hand to mouth? And so I would, that human nature intrigues me a lot. And you did mention, and I made a quick note before I came here, the pursuit of happiness is in our Declaration of Independence. Unalienable rights, life, liberty, and so I read that and I said, the founders, Jefferson, whoever, Washington, they foresaw this. They saw the fact that the pursuit of happiness would be should be part of a Declaration of Independence. So I would like you to now segue into that, if you can, and tell us how your research into happiness, well-being, the wellness is so important in understanding human nature, so we don't make the same mistakes, um, years from now.
Okay. So I think it's a very good question. I think that's really, I think individually and socially, it's very important for us ultimately to have a happy life. You know, so happiness is really good in this case thing to have. But it's something is really missing. It's missing. There are a lot of indicators, particularly in the West now. Last year alone, there were over 5,000 books published on happiness. That's clear indication of the demand for that. When people are actually are seeking happiness, they are not happy. That's why they are looking for some, in this case, book and hope that they can actually learn the secret for happiness. So that's why I think there are a lot of indicators out there showing that this is something missing, you know, in this age. So the question is why we're not happy? Why we have a lot of things, but we're not really satisfied as we expect to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's basically is because we don't know who we are. And I think it's mainly because in the West, we spend a lot of time to study and examine external worlds. the outer universe, but we actually forget to study the inner universe. And I think in this regard, every single human being is, in this regard, is a kind of entire.
That's that teaching that I got from the brother. You know, I studied, like I say, people always like a Mejan. Who are some of the people that taught you? This professor right here is one of my teachers. I studied under this brother 10 years.
Universe. So, and I think we have a universe within. So, and I think the problem for the issue for us, we need to really go back and study human nature, study the inner universe, try to really at least understand our inner universe. So what I try to do in this, I try to really, based on mainly writing of Said Nursi and Rumi and Ghazali, and I try to really discover some what I call important aspect of this inner universe. What I come up with ultimately, in Nursi's term, every human body is like a palace. So within this palace, there are residents, and the residents of this palace, in this case, are let's say what I call our 7 key residents of this palace is what I call the king, the judge, the elephant, the wise advisor, the good advisor, the bad advisor, and the guards. So those are the 7 key residents of this palace. Question is, like, I have 5 children, and we have actually in this case 7 members of the same family. For me, when I look at it, I see peace and happiness in my house, my family, can only be accomplished if I actually know the needs and desires of every single members, and try to basically help every one of them, or every one of them, if ultimately accomplish their goal, that we can have a happiness in house. But if, let's say, my little one's really too sweet and I spend all time feed her and help her and ignore all other members of family, and definitely they cannot be joy and happiness in this house. I see the same thing happening in our palace of human being. So what I see that basically in capitalist system, the elephant, which is in this case the animal spirit and nafs in Islamic term, is well served. And basically, we try to do everything just serve the elephant, but we ignore the king, which is the spiritual heart. We ignore the judge, which is Vijnan or conscious. So we actually use the advisor, wise advisor, or the mind, which has a certain desires and need, but we use this even as a tool to just serve the elephant. And also what happened, interestingly, the guard is supposed to just provide certain protection for the house, but the guard kind of actually do a coup, as very common in Turkey as well. I think that the guard become a kind of commander-in-chief and control everything. So, and that's why you create kind of inner guards. So the ego and everything become ego-driven. Then you try to think that as if you are God. You can do whatever you want. So the system basically telling you that. So in my understanding, in this case, the true happiness can only be accomplished once we study every element of human nature, understand their capacity, potential, their needs and desires, and try to provide nutrition to disclose their potential. At the same time, trying to protect them from any harmful things. I think that's what we can truly bring happiness to our inner palace. So that's why what I try to basically think more about it, try to study them, and try to really understand every element and their needs and desire, and how capitalism actually perceive them, and how in this case we can come up with alternative way to really deal with those elements. That's kind of main what I call a grand theory of inner universe. So I think we need that. We need to really go back and discover the inner universe and understand those elements. Then we can know who we are to a certain extent, and then we can truly provide or have a certain lifestyle to accomplish or what you call authentic and enduring happiness and pure happiness.
Interesting. does materialism by itself, pursuit of money, accumulation of wealth, are they big causes of unhappiness?
Yeah, yeah. I think the problem with that with when material consumption become the main goal, the mind is occupied just to make money and to please the elephants. So everything goes around to fulfill the desires of the elephant or the animal desires within human nature. Now the question is, you don't have any time left for the mind, for the heart, for the judge, which is in conscience within you. So you need to, in this case, be balanced. I'm not saying that you should completely ignore your animal side and should not have any what I call sensual pleasure. No, but you have to actually have a balanced way. Make sure that you, in this case, yes, it's fun, let's say, to eat, to listen music, to play, but it's also fun to read because you can have intellectual pleasure when you read and expand your understanding of reality. So, but I think we put a lot of emphasis on what we call on sensual pleasure, and an egoistic pleasure, but we kind of deny that we can have intellectual pleasure, we can have spiritual pleasure. So that's why I think we need to, in this case, capitalism ignoring and to a certain extent actually destroying certain elements of human nature, not just ignoring, destroying them, poisoning them. So that's why it will become hard for you to be a spiritual being and have a spiritual life, in a truly capitalist country. So that's why I think that's once we become, in this case, have a balanced way of lifestyles, try to really recognize and fulfill the needs and desire of each element of of our human palace, that I think we can be happy. That's my arguments.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, on that uplifting and happy note, I am just canceling. Now, I guess we are done with the first session of our talk, and we'll be back with the Q&A session shortly.
Allure, sir, with Ruby Forum. What do you offer as an alternative?
Yes, sir. So yeah, I ain't gonna hold you long, but yeah, that's basically you know, like I say, one of the master teachers I studied under, but brother get a lot deeper than that. And I remember him demonstrating that same information though years ago. And like I say, the brother financial forecaster, he was right here in my city, and he in Saudi Arabia now at the palace teaching over there. I've been trying to reach out to the good brother, but learned a lot from that brother. Like I said, when it came to dealing with, like he was talking about the inner universe, the macrocosm and microcosm. And you see, he ain't on no, he definitely ain't pushing no Arabism and Sunniism. And the brother mine is on a whole nother level. Y'all should check him out. And preparation for that, is what, made me ready to be able to accept, being here in my Moorish American government. We don't go through what we go through by chance. We learn from different stages in our life to give us grand degrees of unfoldment. And so, yeah, that's the main thing, family. It's all about recognizing deific will, the reality of the God within, and through that we can accomplish anything that we seek to accomplish. But if you don't believe within the self and know the self and study the self, then you will always be a slave to somebody outside of the self. That's really what, I was saying in all of this, but just, pulling the layers off of a lot of that doctrine and indoctrination that we done been taught over here under Western academia. When it comes to belief and belief in God, worshiping God and knowing who the God is, the reality is he has always been present, ever present, and he's working through you. So if you're looking for salvation, again, so family, I just want to give honors to you. If you're looking for salvation at the end of anybody else's arm of extension, that's why I was saying we burn up from the start. Yeah, we give honors to the brothers like that. Like I said, that's one of my master teachers, Brother Niketi Ayadeen, and a couple other brothers that I done had the pleasure of being able to study under. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's been a powerful demonstration, family. You know, it's always love to invite our family in here. You know, I know it's late. This is just something I wanted to bring forth, and hopefully somebody who see this video, it aid in the system. Again, what we established, for those who didn't see it, and you can go back and watch the video, is that God always manifested himself according to the people who needed his presence. You know, he never demonstrated spookism. He either sent, you know, in the Bible, we see he came himself, you know, but he sent angels and messengers, and that was still the presence of God. And so it is in this new era and time when Prophet Noble Drew Ali came to the Moors. You know, that was our extension of divinity. He was our extension of divinity, you know, along with a couple of more. You know, Marcus Mosai Garvey L, you know, the Harbinger, who helped pave the way. You know, a lot of our family that came, you know, through our Hebrew lineage. You know, we got a lot of different ones who also come through that area that studied under the prophet. We got people that came after the prophet. You know, even though they went and did their own thing, you know, all of us, when I look at the teachings that were taught, the most successful among everybody that came after Prophet Noble Drew Ali, they taught that basically God basically speaks to man through man. You know, what made even, for example, Father Divine, you know, he was teaching that he was God. And go back and look at how successful he was. You know, he was teaching that God worked through him. You know, he even your boy, our beloved brother Elijah Poole Bay. You know, he taught man is God. You know, Prophet Noble Drew Ali in his teachings taught the same thing. The key is that our people don't believe that they got that much divinity in them, and that's why we continue to be at the bottom in society. Even the European. The European is convinced to them that they God. They carry themselves like that in their white supremacy. And look at what they're able to build. They God and everybody else is going to serve them. That's how they think. Until we start thinking on that particular level, family, you know, because, I mean, nobody can be no more offended than these people that's over here, you know, changing their genders or whatever the case may be. You know, that's a whole nother conversation. But when it comes down to dealing with man being one with the creator and God being one with that, you got to be comfortable in that. You got to be confident in that. You got to demonstrate that. But when you say you're a God man, you can't be a slave and a God at the same time. In fact, you can't enslave a God. So with that being said, family, we just want to say gratitude to you. And we love you, brothers and sisters. You know, all of those who are within the sound of my voice, I'm going to keep bringing these demonstrations to the manifest. Our brother Noble Brian say, Brother Commission, Prophet say, you from Missouri, I have got to show you. And the Berlin Conference took place in 1885 that brought forth new names for what is called Africa today. That's a fact. What our brothers say. Our brothers said, based on their ancestry DNA test wouldn't allow the Cubalon map to be more accurate source. It says to use, it says for those who were said into slavery from that area. Yeah, you know, that's the way Rome moved. But yeah, we give honors to everybody checked in. We're going to give everybody a shout out that checked in tonight. Brother Babe Brothers, Vickers World, we see you checking in all the time, family. Aki Kaba, we done seen you before Islamism. Peace and love, family. This is my Casa Su Casa. Y'all, hey, y'all can come here anytime. Told you I be opening up the floor too. Daniel Brown, we give honors to you, brother. You know, yeah, that brother made, you know, he definitely did Islamism without the schism. We love you, family. So yeah, y'all check out brother Maketi Ayadeen too on some of the drawings that he got out there. Like I told you, this book right here, I'm gonna show you the book before we go. And I also got something else in my closing out I'm gonna show you as well. Let's see. Let's see. Put this in there, brother. Get a lot of this stuff. Yeah, old Saeed Nursi was locked up in prison. You know, the Turkish government had locked him up for going against Darwinism back then. So he wrote a lot of this stuff while he was locked up. But you got to get this book, family. Dang, we want $50 for that thing now. They tripping. It's a small book. These people crazy. But if you look at it down there, you see it's called The Man of the Millennium. Observations of a Traveler Questioning Creation Concerning His Maker. And this was, like I said, one of the keys. They call this the staff of Moses. You know, he was rebutting. Man basically went on a journey questioning creation and the creator. He ended up in the presence of himself. He was so cold-blooded in this book, he had the man own cells basically telling him, you know, if you don't know no better or no more than, you know, somebody else told you something, like the Barata Rabo degree in our book, you know, just be quiet. That's what his own cells in his body was saying to him. Can you tell us how you was made? You know, are the planets in the planetary sea. Can you tell us how fast we move and, you know, the revolutionary process? That's a powerful book, the Supreme Science. All observation in self to show that even if somebody tried to deny the creator, if you look at yourself in the intelligent design, you know, you have to basically give honors to the creator. You know, you can't deny it. He made you, and that's what it is. But in my closing, I told our family I was going to give them a drawing from this particular work too. This is coming forth from where it is. Did it disappear? Yeah, this one here. I'm going to go into this book. I want to give y'all an Arabic definition for man too. So when y'all hear us use this terminology, you can see this is actually man in Arabic. That's the letter M, that's A and N. For those, that would be Mem, right? Mem, and that's the A, M-A, and again, Nun. Man in the Arabic, right? It says an indeclinable conjunctive pronoun for he, she, they, who, whosoever, also used as an interrogative in a condition, mood, and has influence on the temporal value of verbs. So this takes the gender out of the expression of man if you use it this way. You know, and we're saying this because spirit has no gender. So we don't want our sisters to feel like we on some chauvinism. When you hear us say, you know, well, God is a man, you know, we look at it from this standpoint. We saying God can express himself through the masculine or the feminine. You see? It says it is always used to designate reasonable beings, except when reasonable and unreasonable rationales or irrationals are combined and mentioned at the same time, as in the verse of Surah 24, ayat 45. In these cases, the irrational creatures are to some extent by a figure of speech assimilated to reasonable beings. It is used, you know, for masculine, feminine, single, dual, plural, and also relative pronoun. So this is the word man in the Arabic as opposed to the English. And this also corresponds with man in relation to dealing with a nation of people. Because man representing a nation of people. So, okay, let me get into this last little portion here in my closing. This is coming from the work of our brother, Mustafa Gadala. Let me make sure I have my share. Nope. Okay. I appreciate your family. That's why I figured I had to look back, because sometimes I be thinking I'm sharing, and sometimes I do be sharing it. It don't be sharing my screen. I don't know if it's because I go into a certain tab, it'll do that. But nevertheless, the definition of man, again, y'all didn't see that. I'll show you what I was reading. I ain't got to read it again. Y'all can go back over it on your time. But that's actually an Arabic word right there, man, that I was just reading. So, again, I told y'all I was going to give you the drawing out of this because it's in relation to the same thing we were just talking about. So let me go into the Egyptian cosmology by our brother Mustafa Gadala. And this is dealing with the part 2, the principles, and I'm going to just touch on some. I ain't going to go into everything. I'm going to just read some of the brother's drawings in relation to some of the same stuff we was talking about, dealing with God personified himself, through his creation and so forth and so on. So this is part 2, the principles and the principles of creation, right? The brother Mustafa Gadala, who is a native-born Egyptian, the animating energies of the universe. Listen to what he's saying. For those who think that in ancient Kemet, our ancestors wasn't no scientists, listen to what he's saying. In the pre-creation, beginning in noon or nothingness, every Egyptian creation text begin with the same basic belief that before the beginning of things, there was a liquidy primeval abyss everywhere, endless, without boundaries or direction. For those who don't know, this would be referring to Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, when they talk about the Spirit of God moving upon the face of the waters, and it was void without form, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Comedically, it had already been taught about. I like to call it the celestial Nile, or the melanin drenched, universe, the cosmos is what I like to call it. So it says the Egyptians called this cosmic ocean of watery chaos Nu, Nai, or none, which is the unpolarized state of matter. Water is formless and of itself does not take on any shape, nor does it resist being shaped. Scientists agree with the ancient Egyptian description of the origin of the universe as being an abyss. Scientists refer to this abyss as neutron soup, where there are neither electrons nor protons. Only neutrons forming one huge, it says forming one huge, extremely dense nucleus. Such chaos in pre-creation state was caused by the compression of matter. Atoms did not exist in their normal states, but were squeezed so closely together that many atomic nuclei were crowded into space and previously occupied by a single normal atom. Under such conditions, the electrons of these atoms were squeezed out of their orbits and moved about freely in a chaotic, degenerate state. Nu, Nai, and Noon is the subjective being, the symbol of unformed, undefined, undifferentiated energy / matter, inert or inactive, the uncreated state before the creation. It cannot be the cause of its transformation. The term infinite, of course, is synonymous with not finite or finite, undefined, unlimited, unshaped, undifferentiated, and so on. This means that the energy and matter out of which all things are formed must be, in its essential state, unformed, undefined, undifferentiated, etc. If the material basis of the world had any essential definitions, formations, these would act as limiting factors to its ability to be transformed infinitely. Its essential lack of definition is an absolute requirement for God's creative omnipotence. Let creation begin. The condensed energy in pre-creation neutron soup was continuously building up. This condensed energy reached the optimum concentration of build-up energy that led to its explosion and expansion outwardly about 15 billion years ago. The loud sound of this explosion is what caused the breakup of the constituent parts of the universe. The ancient Egyptian texts likewise repeatedly stretched that the divine command voice, meaning the divine sound, was the cause of creation. Sound is vibration. That's why it gets into the word and so forth and so on. So it says sound and form. The earliest recovered ancient Egyptian text 5,000 years ago showed a belief that the word caused the creation of the world. The Egyptian book of coming forth by light, wrongly commonly translated as the book of the dead, the oldest written text in the world, states, I am the eternal. I am that which created the word, and I am the word. See, that's where they get the concept from. In the beginning was the word with God, and the word was God. See, in ancient Kemet, it stated, I am the eternal word, and I am that which created the word, and I am the word. It say, we also find in the book of the divine cow, found in the shrines of Tutankhamun, that the heavens and their hosts came into existence merely by pronouncing words whose sound alone evokes things. As its name is pronounced, so the thing comes into being. It says, for the name is a reality, the thing itself. In other words, each particular sound has its corresponding form. Modern science has confirmed the direct relationship between sound wave frequency and form. The word, any word, is scientifically a vibrational, complex element, which is a wave phenomenon characterized by movements of variable frequency and intensity. In other words, sound is caused by compressing air particles, by rearranging and spacing the movement of air particles and creating forms. Each sound wave frequency has its own geometrical corresponding form. And we can show you that if you take sound to plates and you charge them with electricity and you put colorful sand on them, they will form geometric shapes. And this shows that vibration and sound actually produce geometric shapes. And this is how you find things out there in the cosmos, such as your different constellations and, new life coming out of the sea, because creation is still actually being demonstrated. It never stopped. We don't accept the fact they say, in Deific, they say, well, God rested. No, God's still creating right now. Really, he just spoke in the beginning, and that voice reverberated. That same vibration is basically still vibrating all the way up into now. That's why you see new life forms, new galaxies, new star clusters. That's all dealing with vibration, family. That's what make the geometric shapes. So that's what sacred geometry is all about. So it says the word, or any word, is scientifically vibrational, complex element, which is a wave phenomenon characterized by movements of variable frequency and intensity. In other words, sound is caused by compressing air particles, by rearranging the space and the movement of air particles and creating forms. Each sound wave frequency has its own geometrical corresponding form. The divine sound transformed the potential inert energy, matter, in noon into parts of the universe's differentiated order, structured kinetic energies in the form of objects, thoughts, forces, physical phenomena, etc. Transforming one type of energy potential into another type kinetic made the universe come to life in whole and its constituent parts. It is all a matter of energies. Atom, the manifested cosmic energy. As we have seen, creation came out of a state of non-creation. The Egyptians called it Nun, or Nun, or Nil, also represents the pre-creation state of the universe. There is no universe, non, nil, zero. Such a state of the universe represents the subjective being, unformed, undefined, undifferentiated energy and matter. Its inert energy is inactive. On the other hand, the creation state is orderly formed, defined, and differentiated. The totality of the divine energy during the creation state is called atom by the Egyptians. Creation is sorting out or giving definition to. It says bringing order to all the chaos, undifferentiated energy and matter and consciousness of the primeval state. All of the ancient Egyptian accounts of creation exhibited this with well-defined, clearly demarcated stages. The first stage of creation was the self-creation of the Supreme Being as creator and being. The passage from subjective being, Nu, Nai, and Noon, to objective being, Atom. In the simple human terms, this is equivalent to the moment that one passes from sleeping, unconscious state, subjective being, to being aware of oneself, gaining consciousness, objective being. It's like standing on solid ground. You can see that a lot of the stuff that, you heard our family and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad talking about the atom coming out of darkness and all that. This was taught in Kemet. You see, he called it Egyptian wisdom in the theology of time. But it says this stage of creation was represented by the Egyptian sages as Altum rising out of the Nu, Nai, and the Noon. As Unas, so-called pyramid text, there's the following invocation. Salutations to thee, Atum. Salutations to thee who comes into being by himself. Thou art high in this thy high mound. Thou comest into being in this thy name, Kepri, becoming one. And those who know Kepri was there during the time of creation. So was Ta, Altum or Altum Ra, the hidden that become manifest. Same teaching, family. Even in the Moorish Holy Quran, when it talk about protoplasm, for those who don't know, protoplasm means the first life form, which actually deals with atomic substance. That's one to grow on too for my Moorish kin. So atom means the oneness of all, the complete. Atom, it says, connected with the root tam, or tamam, meaning to be complete or to make an end of. In ancient Egyptian texts, atom means this, who completes or perfects, and in the litany array, atom is recognized as the complete one, the all. The ancient Egyptian text emphasize that the complete one contains all. The ancient Egyptian text reads, I am many of names and many of forms, and my being exists in every nature. See, now this is getting into what we was talking about earlier. You know what I mean? This is expressing that arm, leg, arm, head, and man being the Deific will, the Deific will in ties and unity with his creator. It says numerically, one is not a number, but the essence of the underlying principle of the number. All other numbers being made of it. One represents unity. The absolute is unpolarized energy. Atom, as the number one, is neither odd nor even, but both. Atom is neither female nor male, but both. Atom is the totality of the orderly energy matrix during the creation stage, while Noon is the disorderly energy compound, subjective being, the total divine energy within the universe called Noon in its chaotic state, and Atom in its orderly creation in its points of state of process. Atom represents the release in an orderly sequence of the existing energy within Noon, i.e. bringing it to life. This represents the objective being. Noon and Atom are the images of each other, like the numbers 0 and 1. 0 is nothing, nil, and 1 means the all. Existence of the all, the becoming one. And this is where I'm ending it at. It says, creation is the sword not given definition to or bringing order to all, the chaos of undifferentiated matter, energy and matter. It says in consciousness of the primeval evil state. All of the ancient Egyptian accounts of creation exhibited this well-defined, clearly demarcated stages. The seed of creation out of which everything originated is Atom. Chapter 1 in the Moorish Holy Quran, we talk about the seed of creation, right? It says, and just as the plant is contained within the seed, So everything that is contained in the universe is atom too. That's like we say the same thing. The seed is, is perfect as its mother. The seed. So it says atom, the one who is all, the all, as the master of the universe declares in the ancient Egyptian papyrus, commonly known as the Bremer Rhine papyrus. When I manifested myself into existence, existence existed. I came into existence in the form of the existent, which came into existence in the first time. Coming into existence according to the mode of existence of the existent, I therefore existed. And it was thus that existent came into existence. This is the expression. And it says, in other words, when the master of the universe came into existence, the whole of creation came into existence, because the complete one contains the all. So this shows how you are connected to the supreme being. Here it is, the grand finale, Neteru, the divine energies. We just saw that when the master of the universe came into existence, the whole creation came into existence, because the complete one contains the all. The cycle of creation is caused and maintained by divine forces, energies. These energies, like the perpetual cycle of creation, go through a process of transformation from birth, life, aging, dying, death to rebirth. We as human beings have similar life forces that change throughout our lifetime. Our human bodies consist of numerous cycles that govern our life existence. All forces die out when we die. The Egyptian called these divine forces Neteru. The main theme of the universe is its cycle of nature. The Neteru are the forces of nature, which make the world go around, so to speak. To simply call them gods and goddesses gives a false impression. The divine energy that manifests itself in creation cycle is defined by the constituent energy aspects, which were called Neteru by the ancient Egyptians. In order for creation to exist and to be maintained, this divine energy must be thought of in terms of male and female principles. Therefore, ancient Egyptians expressed the cosmic energy forces in the terms of Netert, which are feminine principle, and Neter, male principle. The Egyptian word Neter, or nature, or Neter, means a power that is able to generate life and maintain it when generated. In other words, like we say, we wear the L degree, and it means being able to create something and also govern what you create. It says, as all parts of creation go through the cycle of birth, life, death, and rebirth, so do the driving energies during these stages of this cycle. It is therefore that the ancient Egyptian Neteru, being divine energies, went and continue to go through the same cycle of birth, growth, and death, and renewal. Such understanding was common to all, as noted by Plutarch, that the multitude of forces of nature known as Neteru are born or created subject to continuous changes, age, and die, and are reborn. We can give the example of the caterpillar that is born, lives, and builds its own cocoon, and where it dies, or better yet, transforms into a butterfly, which lays eggs, and on and on. What we have here is the cyclical transformation from one form state of energy to another. Another example is the water cycle. The water that evaporates, forming the clouds that rain back to the earth. It is all an orderly cycle, transformation of energies in various forms. When you think of Neteru, not as gods and goddesses, but as cosmic energy forces, one can see the ancient Egyptian system as a brilliant representation of the universe. Philosophically, this cycle of nature, natural transformation, it says, is similar to our saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And so this is the last portion here. In scientific circles, this is known as the natural law of the conservation of energy, which is described as the principle that energy is never consumed but only changes form, and the total energy in the physical system, such as the universe, cannot be increased or diminished. So y'all got to get this work right here, family. Get this particular book, Egyptian cosmology and the creation cycle. And it goes deeper into man and God being one with man, as you see it's going into Ma'at and all of that. And so with that being said, that's what all this is being built upon, what I was demonstrating. It's going back to that teaching that has always been taught in ancient Kemet, and it's been taught in most of these religious teaching, family. So we just say gratitude, peace, love, and law at all costs. Islamism without the schism. Moorish science is the only science that our people need in order to uplift them. So we got more to come, family. We really going into the archives. You see, they think that they had been getting some of what we was giving before, but we ain't even scratched the surface. I'm like the well of Zim, family. I never run dry. So that being said, peace, love, and law at all costs. We love you. Islamism without the schism. And make sure y'all let these people know we here. Because we getting ready to take over this whole platform with this consciousness that we got to bring to the manifest. We ain't no one-trick ponies over here. Islamism without the schism. We love you.